All right, we're good.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission for April 18th, 2018. And our first hearing tonight is a request for determination of applicability for 7 River Bend, request to install a patio and a freestanding sitting wall. Good evening.
Good evening. So we are going to construct a patio, a 14 by 13 patio that is going to be just under the 100-foot buffer from the conservation line. The construction of the dry set paver block patio with dimensions of 14 foot by 13 feet. Excavation of the footprint of the patio is what we are planning on doing. We're going to compact a subgrade, deliver grade, and compact approximately 10 tons of gravel base. Paver blocks set in 1-inch mason sand, approximately 2 tons. Pavers installed in an I pattern, and then pavers will be set level flush, and then there will be a sitting wall. And the pictures that we have, this will be the wall once it's constructed with a cap. It's a veneer with CMU block, and this is what the existing wall is now. And this is what the patio will look like.
Except that it wouldn't be natural stone. What we're showing over here on the picture is basically natural stone. I just wanted to give you guys the idea. We're building freestanding block wall sitting on gravel footing, veneered with natural stone, 1.5 inches natural stone. And it's just going to be sitting wall. Unfortunately, we started the project without consulting with Amy, and that's where, we kind of discovered that, 100-foot mark goes right in the middle of the patio. So.
Yep.
Any comments for us,
Yeah,
Amy?
it's also riverfront area, so the whole lot pretty much, except the very northwest corner, is within conservation jurisdiction, not just the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetland, which is the marsh. It's really the whole property pretty much, plus floodplain. So the closest point is about 75 feet away. I can see where the mistake was made because there is part of the road that kind of goes between this property and the marsh. So stopped the work. I didn't levy any fines. Said they had to do kind of an after-the-fact filing for this determination. I thought it was fairly doable. It's in an existing lawn area outside the 50. The one thing that we kind of talked about on site today, we did a site visit, is so it's 182 square feet of additional hardscape. Typically, for the commission will request for any new hardscape in a buffer zone that in the 50 to 100 that you do 2 times the amount of planting mitigation. There's plenty of area that still wouldn't be in the view to accomplish some native plantings there.
Yeah, no problem.
So that so if it's 182 square feet, so just shy of 400 square feet of planting with consultation from this department, I would recommend approval with a -3.
Thanks, Amy. Any comments from the commission? Carolyn, do you want to start?
No, I don't have any comments.
Paul? None? Mark?
No?
Yeah, we were out there today, and I agree with Amy that there should be some mitigation. The adjacent property has some marsh plantings as mitigation that was done for their project, and possibly adjacent to that could do some similar plantings.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to coordinate everything with Amy, and we'll develop a plan as far as that's concerned. And
Yeah, kind of on the southern property line where there's an existing fence. I don't know if there's an easement there. We'd have to look at that for any property landward, but that's a good location for maybe some high tide bush, bayberry,
Right.
beach plum. Not in a view-ish area for them, but would offset the hardscape.
Well,
And of course, we could speak with your client about that.
Okay, no problem. Well, actually, we were planning to do planting in that area, right behind the wall,
Okay.
between the fence, so that's,
Okay.
but now that we know you know, what we need to do, and.
We could do that too.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I'll be happy to, right?
So I'm hearing one condition on 480 square feet of plantings?
About 400 square feet of planting.
Okay.
Okay.
And coordination of the planting plan with Amy before it happens?
Yeah, it's pretty minor. you
Yep.
know.
Okay.
I'd just like to comment that I'm getting a little annoyed with how many cases come to us after they have done work. And then we looked at what you, I know this isn't finished, but you substantially started to. For us to reject this, you'd have to take down, you know, already put in place work. It's just getting a little annoying that we have that this happens.
I appreciate your feedback. However, I was just assuming that I'm safe, considering all the neighbors. I've done business in the neighborhood for a while. I work almost on every project that is near the water with Amy. It was the beginning of the season. That was our first project for the season, and I assumed since there is privet along the road, I'm like, oh, we may be safe. I shouldn't have assumed, and it's probably my first case that I have to deal with this type of issue after the work has been started. So, as far as I'm concerned, as an owner of the company, I try to do everything by the book, and I apologize about you know, overlooking at this situation, and I take responsibility. If we had to take it down, obviously we were going to absorb the cost and recover the area just the way, you know, it was before we started. So again, we wish we didn't have to deal with this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say the fact that the wall is on the other side of the road and so close to the margin, the 100-foot line, that it didn't trigger a more severe response?
Yes, just the roads in between. I could see where, especially because on where the marsh is, there's actually this very old fence too. Kind of breaks up where the marsh, the vision, you can't really see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see the misunderstanding, and it's not so, it just didn't seem so egregious as some of the other ones that we tend to see. So,
Right.
and I just know from working with S&E that they generally do go by the book as much as they can. I could see where this would be an oversight.
Okay.
I can also see where it's a very, very easy mistake in that application.
Right. Do one of the commission members want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the installation of the patio and freestanding sitting wall at 7 River Bend with the mitigation that we discussed.
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor, state aye.
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 Please sign.
None opposed. Motion
I'll
carries.
get this to you very shortly, probably the beginning of next week at the latest.
No problem.
Carolyn, would you be so kind as to hold these on your end? Thank you. You're all set?
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Too. Our next hearing is a request for determination of applicability for 7 Ginger Plum Lane. It is a septic system upgrade.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Terry Hayes. I'm a registered sanitarian. I'm the one who did the plan with for Sweetser Engineering. Mr. Wilcox would have been here, but unfortunately he's suffering down in Florida with all the heat and his grandkids. So I tried on his sweater, but it didn't fit. So this is an upgrade of a failed septic system. In talking with our botanist and discussions with Robin, it's our opinion that if the house wasn't there, this whole lot would have been a dune. So we've tried to keep the septic system as far away from the undisturbed area as possible. It's tucked as far away from the resource area as we could possibly get it.
Any comments, Amy?
It's proposed, I mean, it is and is proposed to be in the existing gravel driveway area, from what I understand.
Yep.
And then the existing system is about 80 feet away from the landward edge of Dune. The proposed system is 97. And it will meet, I believe, you'll have to go to the Board of Health. You're going from a 4-bedroom, you're hoping to get a 5. That's really more Board of Health than us. They were looking for floor plans. I don't know if they contacted you.
As I say, Robin's been away, so they probably
just
left a
letting you
message on
know,
his thing.
they're looking for floor plans. That way they can count the number of bedrooms.
Okay,
But for us, I mean, it's a pre-existing home on a lot that would be very difficult now to build upon. And this is just an improvement of a failed septic to a Title V system in an already disturbed area. So I would just say if there are any changes as a result of Board of Health, that you come back to us as a change in plan.
agreed.
And I would recommend approval with a -3.
Thanks, Amy. Any comments?
I mean, if there's some way we could structure our vote that it doesn't have to come back to us, can we approve a septic system for a 5-bedroom house? And
That's what we are approving, but I'm just saying if location for some reason changes,
Oh, okay.
then we would
But-
need a
but it's not the
change.
number of-
Yeah,
because this-
right.
because the number of bedrooms will change the size of.
Exactly. So what it can be, when I say change in plan, it's not a hearing per se, it's the commission getting a revised plan. If it's a minor change, recognizing that it's a minor change, but not having a formal hearing on it.
So if we approve for a 5-bedroom and they deny it and they want a 4, the Board of Health wants a 4-bedroom.
They give us a
system,
revised
our
plan.
vote will already count.
Yeah, yeah. And you would see a revision, just so we haven't, yeah. Right. Not another hearing.
Any comments, Paul?
No.
No? Mark?
No, I'm comfortable with it.
No? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve the request for termination for 7 Ginger Plum Lane.
Second?
Seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you
None
so much.
opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
It's a pleasure to seeing you again, Brett.
Yeah, oh, you. That's right. Next, we have a notice of intent for 254 Bank Street to construct a pool, barn garage, and a fence. Good evening.
Good evening, Dan Croto from Moran Engineering. Here with Mark Corliss, the property owner, and also Chris Dietrich from Shoreline Pools is here as well, who would do the pool work, if it's approved. So the pool is the proposed area for the pool is in an area that where a barn had been removed. And it's a area, this whole area of the yard is in existing lawn area. The whole project, no native vegetation gets disturbed, it's all in lawn area. Because it is new hardscape and structure in the 100-foot setback, Mark has worked with, I believe with Amy to come up with mitigation plantings and a mitigation area, and has visited with her on the site.
It's been in the old packet. It's put in an old packet.
The other thing Mark is requesting is along the existing cleared area to be able to put the pool enclosure fence, mainly for keeping his son and dog away from the wetland and safe, and to keep large animals, coyotes, out of the existing yard. I'm going to let Mark talk about what he's done and what he's planning on doing mitigation-wise.
Good evening. We already started planting white spruce upwards of around the circular driveway. Amy and I have worked several times on coming up with a mitigation plan that would hopefully make up for the fact that we're trying to put the fence along that line. I've come up with approximately 7,000 square feet of mitigation, a substantial amount, but I understand it is difficult to put the fence there. When we moved into the home, we were told we couldn't have a fence, without permitting. My dog got out of the yard, he got hit on Bank Street. We found him frozen to death 24 hours later on Grass Pond. So, at this point, I'd like to keep my son safe, the rest of my pets safe. I'm willing to do a split rail fence with mesh on it, 6 to 7 inches above the ground so it won't corridor any animals. Obviously a wooden fence. We're not looking to disturb the property at all. What we've talked with Amy about is taking out a lot of, non-native plants and replacing it, to significantly help the environment. So that was my plan to hopefully, make the fence acceptable. I think it's approximately 1,628 to 1 would be our mitigating.
That's plants to fence
To fence.
area.
Correct.
There's a
We'll be
separate
disturbing
area
about
of,
about 4 feet of actual land with the fence posts. That's what we'd be disturbing, about 20 posts, 4 by 4.
Right.
Does
It's
the-
about 1,100 square feet of new hardscape, including for the garage and pool and all that too, so we take
Correct.
that into account. But
Correct.
you're still providing 4,000, almost 900 square feet, which is a lot of mitigation, so, we look at that too.
Okay. Do you have any more detailed comments?
Yeah.
Amy?
So, Mr. Corliss had applied a long time ago, and because the commission didn't have a quorum, has had to be put off for a couple of hearings. And actually with, my initial take was when I initially looked at this, I looked kind of at things separately. I looked at what was proposed in the 50 to 100 and what was proposed in the 0 to 50. So the future garage, or the garage and the proposed pool, where there used to have been a barn essentially in that area, is what that got demoed a year or two ago,
Yes,
probably.
about a year ago.
Those, I would say, they're an existing lawn area, disturbed area, with mitigation as proposed are very approvable. I did meet with Mr. Corliss on site before he purchased the property about the fence and said it would be difficult, but he's entitled to ask. So the commission doesn't necessarily say fence as a structure in its regulations. It's something we may be changing to be clear for applicants. That's all. The game is clarity. In this particular instance, because we were longer than the 21 days to opening this case, and you did not, and rightfully, and it is your right to not grant a continuance, willfully grant a continuance, we really do not have much of a right to act or to deny, in my opinion, the fence. We couldn't, because we couldn't meet, and then it's almost impossible to get advertisement within that period too, to have another meeting. It's extremely difficult. So under the bylaw, I don't think, I'm just being honest with the commission, I don't think we can really enforce not having a fence in this location. It is in an existing open area, which is good. You're not taking down additional vegetation to put a fence in. It is a steep slope down to the to Grassy Pond, so I can see why you want to put it there. It's going to be a split rail fence. You're offering to raise it for wildlife passage, which is wonderful. Plus, you're doing mitigation at greater than a 4-to-1. When you look at it cumulatively, you're doing greater than 4-to-1 mitigation there. So we met your dog today too, by the way, the French Bulldog. Wanted to keep him.
You can have them.
But with that, in this particular circumstance, I think we should approve it. And that way we can condition the plantings and work with Mr. Corliss on the implementation of the project and the plantings, versus the alternative if the commission were to not look favorably upon this. We would kind of not have the ability to work with you in the future on this particular project. We wouldn't be able to condition it necessarily. So I would, in this particular very specific circumstance, I would recommend approval as presented.
Thanks, Amy. Can I ask a little more detail on the failure to have a quorum
Yep.
and hitting that 21-day window? Does that come from the Wetlands Protection Act or through our bylaw? Where is that
It's the
specified?
bylaw.
The bylaw.
Yep.
Yep. So, and the Wetlands Protection Act does not have a 0 to 50 no disturb zone.
Right.
So that's the key factor there. I do think it's unfortunate. It's really a high threshold to maintain. You know, people get sick, people have their own lives. It's really hard to have a quorum all the time.
Yeah.
And
We hit a
so-
hard spot.
Yeah, it's really difficult, and so it's a very restrictive process, and there's really no exceptions. Is that correct?
I mean, we've lost court cases because having heard projects within 21 days due to lack of quorum. Now, some applicants will grant continuances. You don't have to, but we've not. Across the board, if you don't hear within 21 days, it's a really quick thing for the courts to overturn a denial.
Right.
And again, we may not be able to condition and work with the applicant on the mitigation plantings.
All right.
So I think this is our best option.
Yeah. So as an aside, I think as a commission, we just have to communicate with each other and try to avoid not having a quorum in the
Yeah.
future. It's really,
Hopefully now we're a full board. We're missing 2 tonight still, but we have 7. We won't hopefully be having these problems in the future.
so for conditions, Amy, did you have any specific recommendations for conditioning these different pieces?
Yep, I mean.
Outside of the mitigation?
Right, so we'll talk about drainage for the future garage, roof drainage going into dry wells, or if that location, I think you have enough depth there where you could get a dry well in. If you couldn't to depth to groundwater, you'd put in drip lines. Stuff about the pool, if the pool is ever to be drained, it would have to be taken off site, that pool water and disposed of properly. Traditional things such as temporary irrigation for the native plantings. Is there irrigation out back now?
I don't believe so. We haven't, we were there, late October.
Right.
I'm
Our
not
standard
sure.
would be to not allow any other than the temporary, at least in the 0 to 50. It's up to the commission about anything in the 50 to 100 going forward. If you don't have it, you'd have to apply to put it in if you were to want it. Or it's something that the commission could condition now. We're gonna draft the order, we're gonna draft the conditions and sign it soon. In 2 weeks we'll sign it. We might even do it at the end of the night tonight, the special conditions, I was thinking, to get some of these people have been waiting a really long time. So if we could draft the special conditions later on this evening, we can get them out the door quicker.
Okay, thank you.
That's kind of what I was thinking, Brad.
Right, thanks. So the construction of the pool and the garage will have some new lawn plantings around it, I imagine, as you come out of your construction.
Seed the grass, yeah.
Right, so we'll
Seed it.
want to discuss how we want to condition that.
Yep.
All right, well, let's start with some comments from the commissioners. Carolyn?
That taking this on the merits alone, this fence is going in an area that is already very, very developed. This is not disturbing any
Right.
any border or anything, so I see no problem with doing this.
I totally agree. Having been there, I didn't get to go today, but I agree.
I have a
That
quick
it's-
question though, and this is just for my own interest. This particular fence is sufficient to satisfy the requirement for a fence around a pool?
Yes, as of January 1st, if you have an auto cover, they don't require a fence.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, we were I mentioned I didn't think you
Yes.
needed a fence, and I didn't
Thank
know why.
Really?
This wouldn't happen.
Usually
Yeah.
you have water on top of your auto cover.
Huh.
This is more for keeping the people away from the wetland and the dogs away.
Yes,
from the
no.
I just want to keep everybody safe, you know,
Yeah.
and the last thing I want to do is disturb anything. I just,
And your dog is adorable.
thank you.
He's not a watchdog though.
No, not at all. That one, cut Bank Street, the watchdog.
Oh.
Any comments, Mark?
No, I don't see a problem with it. Actually, it looks to me pretty clear cut.
Are you proposing the mitigation plantings right up to the new proposed fence?
Yes, sir, if possible. I mean, there are some old stumps that
Yeah.
I know we can't use a machine. So
Right.
whatever we can get out by hand, then we'll replace the whole area.
You're talking about the invasives and
Yes.
stuff like that.
Yeah. Amy's been nice enough to help me 4 or 5 times figure out a good way to do this. So I've been very fortunate.
Any further comments? Well, let's, in terms of the treatment of the lawn that'll be reestablished in the 50 to 100, I would like to see a condition to have no fertilizer, no pesticides, no herbicide applications, and just ask the commissioners whether they'd like to also see no irrigation systems.
Would you
As-
allow a temporary above ground to
Certainly.
establish the grasses?
Certainly. And that depends on the proponent as well. If you have an interest in that, you know. you can-
Because I'll have to
Come
do
back.
temporary, right, for the mitigation. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. What do you do for a year or two?
It's usually at least 2 growing seasons, and we would decide whether it's more.
Okay.
That's not a big deal. We want the plants to live. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of plants.
Okay. So that would be the one condition.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
in addition to the plantings.
Yep.
Which, okay. Do we have a motion?
Can I have that big plan back?
I'll make a motion to approve the construction of a pool along the lot and fence for 254 Bank Street with the proposed and the requirements that we put in for drainage and
Yep. And I'll draft all
field
that.
draft.
Right.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Would you be so kind as to sign this? I will draft those conditions and either we'll do it later on tonight or I'll do it in the morning. We'll get those to the language and, but if you would be so kind to sign, we could at least expedite it. Not you.
Oh, okay.
Well, sign whatever you want.
Thank you. Have a good
Sorry,
night.
I didn't mean for that to be harsh.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Go ahead. You can put it over there if you want, Carolyn. They, I gave you folks, old packets that have had a lot of this information in there. Actually, I may have, because, I brought extras in case you didn't have yours. But this you should have. 55 Snow Inn.
The next notice of intent is a continuance for 55 Snow Inn Road, reconstruction of existing licensed dock and dredging.
I do have extras if we need them.
Hello again. For the record, Mark Burgess with Shorefront Consulting. with Skipper Lee, the applicant, right next to me. Welcome new members, by the way. You're going to enjoy this thoroughly. So just to bring you up to speed, on the last hearing, we gave you it was suggested one way to improve the project was to move the dredging out of, or only to mean low water, so there was no dredging of the beach. We did that. We changed the plan, revised it accordingly. The dredge volumes went down, of course. That plan did go back in front of Waterways, and we had asked them about moving the float out, and the answer we got on that suggestion was a solid no. But they were willing, they were fine with moving the dredging. I don't know if Heinz sent an updated comment or anything, but I
No.
can paraphrase, but that was about it.
That's okay, I did speak with him about it.
He's fine with this plan, and I have a signed
Yep.
plan from Waterways in my bag.
Okay.
That's
I believe
really,
you.
that's really the long and short of it.
Just to make you aware, we have two new members, James and Mark,
Mhm.
who were not members at the time of the original hearing.
Yep.
So they will have to abstain tonight. We got the opinion from council. I mean, if they had been members and missed a meeting, that's okay, but because they were not technically members at the beginning, they cannot vote, and you will need a majority of the people present tonight.
So that's majority of the people eligible to vote, or a majority of the people?
The majority of the people who are here tonight, 3 out of 5.
Even though two can't vote.
They're, right.
Are you sure?
Interesting.
Yeah, are you sure it's not 2 out of these 3? What?
It's 3. It's all
It
All
has,
three.
it's the majority of the people sitting.
Okay. I think
That's,
we.
o-
well, I
it's
think we
okay,
knew
let's,
that,
I'm just,
but- Yeah,
Yeah.
nope,
always
let's,
different.
let's go along with
Always
this.
different.
Um,
So we've gone back to the different
Yep.
committees, we've done what we can to modify the project. Everybody else seems to think that this is
Yep.
it's as good as it's gonna be, so.
Yep.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I've reviewed and I've had feedback from the commission as well. I'll give you some feedback here. What the changes are, they did move the overwash seaward a little bit, which does reduce the amount of dredging. They got that out of the intertidal area, so now we don't have to really worry about changing coastal beach into the other water bodies. Survey was a little bit off, so it got essentially redrawn or
Rotated slightly.
rotated, so you could see the majority of the shellfish were found at low water or above. I think in all the spots, 15 out of 33 plots, only 15 were found. 13 of which were oysters, 2 were quahogs, and those were all landward of the overwash bulkhead.
Right along
Uh,
this train, right
right.
along this train section.
Right.
Yep.
So, Mr. Lee has an approved dock, uses it for commercial purposes, and he's gonna, basically just wants to rebuild it, but also do some dredging to get his scow off the bottom. And I
And-
think in this, go ahead,
And raise the dock too, so it.
and raise the dock so it meets
current
standards. Right. So, given that they've shifted the overwash bulkhead, and we would condition, the overwash bulkhead can only be a certain amount above the sediment. Right, exactly, a couple inches. I'm recommending approval. What they're proposing to dredge, if you look at the old shellfish study, it's where the sediment starts to get pretty mucky. They did not, and they also addressed why they didn't go out farther in the shellfish survey, and that is because it was black soup. And they really couldn't go out farther, they said, without losing gear or
People.
themselves. So, now that they've moved the dredge footprint and moved the overwash bulkhead, stayed away from the marsh, the overwash bulkhead will actually protect the marsh from slumping in if you were to dredge without it. I can now recommend approval of the project. And you guys can comment, you just cannot vote.
All right.
Thank you, Amy. So it's the 3 of us. So, any comments?
Will that overwash bulkhead prevent a cleansing out of the water landward?
No,
Not if it's only
because it's,
2 inches higher or so than
right.
the sediment,
The-
below high tide.
Sorry, do you want me to explain it?
I'm
or-
sorry.
I'm sorry.
She's asking me. I talked.
Through the chair, the way an overwash bulkhead works, the top of the bulkhead is basically this, like this much above the mean low water. So any tide higher than low tide goes over it and allows that, any processes landward of that bulkhead to continue it naturally. Doesn't inhibit it.
How far down do you have to go?
Well, the dredging to -3, so if the cantilevered wall, probably about 6 to 8 feet. Just pushed straight down. He could probably stand on it and drive it in.
Thanks.
That doesn't speak well for the sediment.
It's extremely mucky.
I was just gonna say that.
Thinking about the settings.
It's not a dig.
Oh, you are a big guy, I mean, come on.
Yeah. No, I have no comments.
No, I haven't any either.
Okay. Mark, you're entitled to ask questions. All right.
Yeah, I don't really have anything on this.
I'll ask a few.
Okay.
So the overwash bulkhead, do we have an elevation that it'll be set to for the top of it, so that we have a benchmark we can come back
It
to?
is
and-
on there. It is on there on the bottom schematic there.
Yep.
Top of wall is 0,
0.
mean low water. So top of the wall is at low tide.
Okay, so I have the old plan,
Sorry, this one is revised 3/7/18.
right, so,
We could,
Do you want to take this down?
no, I've got the big plan, the revised one, so I just wanted to check on that.
with all the hearing date changes, it was hard to keep track of what packets were which.
Okay,
Same here.
So that's something I think that a suitable condition would be to confirm that
Yes.
elevation post-construction. Would we ask for an as-built for this?
We would probably ask for a post-dredge survey, which is typical. And at that point in time, I mean, I'm assuming when you dredge, you're gonna be putting the wall in pretty
Yes,
much
yes.
simultaneously. So asking for an as-built would be typical,
Okay.
including the dredge and then the height of the wall.
So just to express how I feel, I think this is a project where I typically would not favor an overwash bulkhead in this setting. It's a habitat-altering structure, but I do think that the dredging is positive and useful for this site. I think it will produce environmental benefits, so it kind of balances the two things in my mind. The area that will be dredged is really quite degraded with the sediments that are there. So I guess I'm thinking of mitigation for this, and so we have some shellfish, where we typically ask for shellfish mitigation, but
For a new dock.
for a new dock, not for the dredging. We just remove-
Typically dredging comes with a new dock, so I don't know if we've, just because of dredging, if we've asked for it.
Right. Well, I guess I'd like to discuss the
Yeah.
possibility of mitigating with salt marsh plantings for the overwash bulkhead. Is that something that...
Like a marsh mat. They make the impregnated marsh mats.
Yeah, is there potential to
Would
augment...
actually help protect against
that
any
salt
wave action
marsh.
anyway.
Is it something that people think would stay and grow?
It's hard to say. I've seen a lot of marsh planting projects attempted, and I've only seen a few succeeded. Mother Nature tends to put it where she wants to put it, and
Right.
it's been difficult to put it somewhere else.
Right.
You could try it, but I wouldn't want to condition that had to have a success, because we're kind of forcing Mother Nature to put something. There's a lot of marsh there. If it was going to grow, it would have.
Yeah.
It kind of would have. So
And I'll tell you something about that marsh. I've been watching it for a long, long time. And so last year, the year before last, that marsh grass was coming up through the dock. It was
Yep.
coming everywhere. It was all this tall. It was beautiful. At some point, winter before last, a bunch of rockweed came in. Where the rockweed came from, I don't know. But it got up in that corner and it just matted it down, and it essentially killed the marsh or the grass, or stunted it to a pretty severe degree if you watched it. That's gonna change. that marsh grass is gonna come back again in 3 years. It's gonna be all tall and beautiful again, and then something's gonna happen and it's gonna go away. I think it's just from that building there and the way that that corner is, and if it get, you know, you get a strong southeast wind or something and it all piles up in the breakwater and comes in the harbor, and then you get a northeast wind, it stacks up in that building in that area there, and it just gets thick with seaweed.
Yeah, the rockweed didn't come from inside the harbor,
No.
No.
so it came out
Very
from
strange.
Somewhere else.
probably the breakwater
Yep.
outside the
So
harbor.
it's probably a southeast, and it gets beat up hard and gets in the harbor and ends up there. But it does come back beautifully. I mean, and that's been cyclic for years and years and years.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, if the commission was thinking of any sort of mitigation for dredging, it would be a small amount of shellfish. Small amount.
Yeah. We're changing that slope, you know, it's going from a gradual slope to
Yeah.
a bulkhead. And so wouldn't that allow a better settling of salt marsh, upgrading of it?
Up top it would, or at least would stabilize what's there.
Right.
I don't know, I mean, we have it shown on the plan, but I don't know the exact extent of the marsh.
Yeah.
I think it will allow it, if anything, it'll allow it to grow towards the bulkhead more now that it's stable. But it depends on how much water you have there at high tide too. so.
Right. I guess that would be my interest, because I think the shellfish that's there, let's face it, it's a degraded area. With dredging, it may improve for cohogs.
That's what I was thinking for cohogs.
Right. So, but we do a lot of shellfish seeding, and I wouldn't mind trying a little bit of plantings between what exists now for salt marsh and the bulkhead, unless people tell me it's just not going to work, or it's not going to be significant.
Well, the question there is how much, because now for a new dock, I know it's a flat rate, and we know that amounts to like $6,000.
Well, he's talking about salt marsh though,
Oh.
again.
Well, you said shellfish though, too, right?
No,
I-
Amy's advocating shellfish, and I'm interested in seeing a habitat improvement that might come from having that bulkhead causing the slope to change. And so is there any way to
Stabilize it.
stabilize and augment the seaward edge of that salt marsh? So it really comes down to the experts. If you think it's significant and has utility, it wouldn't be a lot of plantings, I don't think.
No, marsh planting to plant it is relatively cheap. You could start, plant it a foot out and see if that survives. Because if you go 2 feet, I mean, you can go 2 feet if maybe 1 foot survives. Sort of gradually put it in there. I agree with you that it might be nice to attempt it, but I think there's enough mitigation with raising the dock and making it conform to standards that you could try this. It's a cheap alternative, but I wouldn't condition that it has to be successful.
Right.
It's an experiment
If
at
it
best.
fails, you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to mitigate or try again.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I'm happy to try it.
Okay.
I'm just
all
throwing
that
out,
thing's growing down there.
right, I'm throwing out there for you as well as the commissioners as something to try instead of the shellfish.
It only helps to dissipate any wave action in the future that you might, or flooding you might get up to your boathouse there too, so.
Well, and it's stopped the migration of the
Right.
sand from under the boathouse.
Right,
Because
exactly.
that's become
Yeah.
apparent. That sand is
I can see
moving
the
out.
possibility of you might be able to, because your marsh, as it's shown in your site plan, it doesn't go all the way down to low water. I can see you might be able to get another few feet wide across the extent growing, but we could
The
try it and
shellfish,
see, I could draft it, a condition that would basically give you the length and then a couple feet wide to try that out.
because for shellfish, what we do, just say remove what's there.
Or allow the commercial guys to go in there the commercial diggers, right? Or the recreational? to go.
That would be bull raking, and we've done that before with commercial. I don't think there's much there. The survey did not show much.
Down where we're dredging,
No, there's
it's
not.
nothing.
Nothing.
Alright, so they won't even
It
care.
would be above that,
Okay.
they'd be doing any digging.
I think you could
Then
ask
no.
to put some seed there after the fact, but you know what, I think that the seed's gonna come in naturally if the habitat is truly improved like we hope it will be. So I think a very modest amount of salt marsh planting might be worthwhile to see if we
Sure.
can improve that little strip there. And
Do that.
I think that's the condition that I see. Again, I'm not thrilled with the overwash bulkhead, but I think given the dredging benefits, it's probably, it's a positive overall project, and it's what the applicant's looking to do. Any other thoughts or conditions from the commissioners? Any comments from the audience? No? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the reconstruction of an existing licensed dock and dredging for 55 Snow Inn Road with the conditions that, well,
Do we
we're going
want
to
it-
try planting.
Do you want a 2-foot,
I would say 2 to 3 feet wide.
2
by
to
the-
3 feet
By the
wide,
width of the
extending the width of the,
property.
Property's 30 feet long.
Right,
yeah,
so 3 by 30 or so.
yeah, with no real, with no requirements for
Redoing
alternative
alternative
actions
if it
if
fails.
fails.
Right.
But maybe an annual monitoring or an annual report on the status.
Yeah, just progress of the growth, see how it's doing. Pictures,
Actually,
you're down there all the time. so-
we will have an as-built on this.
Yep, so that's
So-
standard, an as-built, and a dredge, including the dredge.
Okay, that reporting could include the plantings reporting.
Okay.
Yep,
It's the same thing.
Fair
okay.
enough.
Usually that has to get done within
So Carolyn, it's for you.
30
I'll
days.
second it.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Motion
Two
carries.
abstentions.
Thank you for your cooperation, too.
3-0.
Good luck.
Come on, not that bad.
No, these two, you new room?
No, I know that.
Oh, yeah.
Tell it of good luck.
I was wishing them well. No,
Just kidding.
that's all.
I don't, I'll email you something.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just, you know me, I'm joking
Yeah.
around.
Take care.
Thank you. Please sign.
Next,
I sign it.
Walter Road.
Walter Road,
Up.
yeah.
Yeah, you're good. It might have gone out in the mail the other day, actually. We're gonna talk about that later tonight. I will get back to you. It's not just these, your two, it's others now.
Sure other people.
Yeah, we are gonna talk about it later. You're welcome to stay, but it's gonna be a long one. You can watch it in the next couple of days. There's a sign-in sheet. I think it's under the agendas, if you guys wouldn't mind. Anybody who didn't sign in, please do. Sorry, Sean.
Sorry.
Okay, the next notice of intent is for 0 and 35 Walter Road. It's a proposal to raise and replace existing home and associated site improvements.
Good evening. For the record, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, representing the Cranes, and yay
could
quorum, thank
share
you.
These are slight changes.
Um,
I'll share with you if you want to pass them.
Got a little unusual thing with the velocity zone, which I'll get to in a minute, but the resource areas for this site are coastal beach. We've got a rock revetment that acts as a coastal bank. Land subject to coastal storm flowage, which is the velocity zone elevation 14, which the maps incorrectly show approximately halfway through the property. So the maps show this all as a velocity zone in this area. We've filed for a determination, and it's part of your package, that we've received a determination that the V-zone line is incorrect and the house is actually outside of any special flood hazard areas. And we'll be filing for a conditional letter of map amendment for the proposed house before we go for building permit to confirm that the new house is also outside of the velocity zone. The house, or the beach is also in a piping plover habitat. It's shown on the NHESP mapping as an area for piping plover. We've received a determination, which you should have a copy from Division of Marine Fisheries, basically stating that we've got a time of year restriction to prevent a prohibitive take of the project. So one of the conditions is that we meet the time of year restriction for work on the stair portion
I was
of
gonna
the
say,
project.
they shouldn't care about the house.
No, it's the
I
rebuilding of the
didn't read it
stair.
right.
Yep. So, again, we don't have any issues with any of their conditions. The project that we have before you is to raise and replace the existing dwelling. The existing house, I don't know if anybody peeked in the windows, had a water pipe rupture a few years back and basically engulfed the interior of the house. There are no floors on the interior of the house now. It's all floor joists. So they are proposing to raise and replace the dwelling, and being the conscientious people that they are, have pushed the house back away from the resource area, as shown in green. The red is where the extent of the existing house and pool area are. There are existing pool fences that encompass the pool and chain link fence that runs along the top of the bank. We're proposing to remove the pool, remove the dwelling, remove all the fences, looking to replace and put a safety fence along the top of adjacent to the VBS area that we're proposing as a safety for the small children. It'll be a rail fence, though, so that any wildlife can migrate through the property. I know it's important that we don't that we keep our wildlife corridors open. So this will open up the property to wildlife that wants to traverse the property. There are some overgrown areas that we're looking to get back into control that are overtaking the native vegetation, and we're looking to replace the beach there in kind. The resultant of the project is reduction of over 2,000 square feet of coverage in the 0 to 50, and a net reduction overall in the 0 to 100 of almost 500 square feet. So I think there are a lot of positive aspects of this project, and with that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do you have a summary for us, Amy?
Yep, a couple of you may remember this from a couple of years ago. This was approved by the Conservation Commission to tear down, rebuild. They've since done some redesign and come back. This is actually an improvement over what was seen as an improvement at that time. So I don't have too many comments, other than I'm glad you clarified about the fence, the existing fence going to a split rail.
Either a split rail or a cable rail fence.
Okay. But something
but something that anything can get through.
Right. Right now, if you went to the site, the whole site has been kind of vacant for couple years now. So a lot of it's grown in with some invasives and some natives. I would just recommend before, during our on-site, we kind of specify exactly what the limit of work is to be removed. There's some stuff to the eastern property line that's mature native stuff that we want to make sure we keep. That's not going to be in the way of construction or views. So it's something that we could talk about on the on-site, because as the limit of work is, it's pretty much the extent of the property, and not that much vegetation is going to need to come out. So there would be, a little bit more of a buffer on probably on the west side and a little bit more on the east side, as well as the 5-foot buffer strip, which there used to be nothing. I went to this property before it was vacant for many years, and they had nothing at the top of the coastal bank. So this is a definite improvement, plus getting a lot of the hardscape out of the 0 to 50 and a reduction in general in the 50 to 100. So they also have agreed to a fescue, which is a drought-tolerant native plant lawn. So with that, I would recommend approval, and including, I do see the driveway is going to be paved, but they have catch basin for that to capture runoff, because it is pitching towards the wall.
Is there irrigation presently?
There is.
There is, so they seek to keep that?
They'd be looking to maintain and keep the existing
But to have
irrigation.
Mhm.
But it should
a
be limited
carpo.
use, yeah, with the
We would just
the
say
drought
no
tolerant fescue.
fertilization.
Right,
Yeah,
It doesn't need fertilization, so.
okay.
right. It actually doesn't like it, so.
Thank you. Do you want to start, Jim, with any comments?
Well, yeah, I'd like to see a condition of no fertilization or pesticide use on the lawn. And are you proposing any sort of buffer in the corners of the property?
There's existing vegetation underneath the overgrown areas that we're
Right.
looking to maintain. We're recommending to bring on a consultant like Genic Studio to work with us to see what's under there,
Yeah.
and to work with Amy to come up with a plan and a strategy for
Yeah.
working those two areas together.
Okay, yeah, that
There are
sounds,
some invasives, but there are some like beach plum that you may want to keep that
Right.
aren't in the way of anything.
Right.
okay.
If I can follow up on that, there's, and presently in the plans, we're not seeing the retaining of those beach plums. And so.
We
that's
could,
some-
yes, we could make it that a condition that only the invasives are removed and that the native vegetation remain within those areas.
Right.
Okay, so that would need to be in the plan,
In the conditions.
in the conditions.
We could put it in the conditions, that's fine.
I'm a little concerned about that, because right now,
We-
it really just shows lawn, I think, and
Uh.
where that, in the western section, there's quite a well-developed beach plum growth that's really functional right now.
What if after it was discovered the extent of the natives by Genic, you just revised the work limit line?
We can revise the work limit line, or we can provide you
On the
with
plan.
a planting plan that shows the retention of those.
That'd be good.
Prior to any work, we'd evaluate and locate the existing vegetation,
Right.
and then
That'd be good.
submit that for the record.
Okay.
And for the
A
file.
piece would be in the 8-foot buffer strip, so part of that would be retained anyways.
It's
Correct,
It
at
is
the,
a 5.
at the edge of the,
It's a 5, it's not an 8?
Right. They, because they're actually reducing, not just in the 50, but site-wide, they don't really have a mitigation requirement per se, but they are offering a 5-foot strip.
since that last plan, we've further reduced, and I guess
Right.
if we had another couple of misquorums, we might end up with a treehouse if we keep reducing this. But we further reduced the coverage within the 0 to 50, so they've asked me to try to, to
Okay.
reduce that.
Are we looking to retain some of the beach plums at both corners? or-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the western corner is really a nice growth of beach plum. Yeah, so I think I'd be more comfortable having it in the plans, but if everybody else is ready to go tonight, then maybe we can just have a condition that is explicit.
Prior to any vegetation removal on the site, we need that planting plan.
Okay,
Sound all right?
sure. All right, so I kind of interrupted you, Jim. Any other comments?
No, that was it. Yeah.
Okay. Mark?
No, I'm good.
No, good. No?
No, nothing.
Carolyn, any comments?
No, well, we couldn't get onto the property today.
We had to kind of look at it from the neighbor.
So it was hard to see, like I haven't seen the beach plums.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard to see we were on the Bowers property next door.
You couldn't,
It was locked up.
they have that
They have the,
thing at the driveway.
yeah.
I
Not
didn't even,
just
I didn't even
the,
think of that.
that's okay. We saw it from the neighbors. We could see most of it.
See a little
They've
bit.
also got a squatter too that's staying in the house, so they're in
That's
kind of a
what I
rush to
told
get
them.
to get the house demoed before there's
Yeah.
any liability issues.
So it's, no, I really don't have any questions.
Okay. Yeah, that was the one item, was I thought that beach plum was quite functional, and I hated to see it just turn to lawn in that corner. So if we can get some retention of that. A little concerned about the driveway coming so close to the 50, but I didn't hear any of the concerns from other members on that. Is it paved right now? I don't think so.
There's house within.
Mostly house.
It's mostly house, yeah,
There's a little bit, that's a little bit more
yeah.
proposed.
I think the square footage improvement in the 0 to 50 is substantial. When we reviewed this last time around, I wasn't very thrilled with what came out of it.
It was a slight improvement.
Yeah, this is,
Not as much as
this
this.
is a.
Yeah, they look to retain, the swimming pool in the last go round, and
Yep.
they said as long as we can have, an area that the kids can play in, then we don't need to have a big patio out there.
Right.
Right.
So,
I do have a question. Do we have to do something to get rid of the other permit we gave them?
That once this gets permitted, they could ask for a certificate of compliance for work not done under that other permit.
Okay, and can we make that a condition that they do that?
Absolutely. absolutely.
So we don't have to do
Close
this
that other
in
permit.
another 3 years?
That's a good question.
The Cranes are pretty diligent about these type of things. I will make a note of it.
And the septic is well up on the property?
The septic is to remain, it's back in this area here,
Right,
outside of the 100-foot buffer.
right. And that's one of the reasons why further movement off the bank wasn't considered. because
Yeah, they
you
look to utilize it,
disrupt-
exactly. We're as
disrupt
close to the septic as we can be.
that. Right.
How many bedrooms is the current house?
I believe it's 6.
Okay, it's so 6 to 6.
Yeah, it's not changing.
No changes to the dimensions for the staircase leading to the beach?
No, in kind.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to approve the notice of intent with the conditions of having a planting plan provided after that Amy will review.
Yeah,
and
before
approve.
they remove the vegetation, we'll make sure we have that.
Okay. And then the condition of having no fertilizer, pesticides, or herbicides in the 0 to 50.
With the exception that herbicides would be allowed by a licensed professional for the invasives, particularly the bittersweet. The other stuff
Bittersweet.
doesn't really need it,
Right.
but
Up in the front.
yeah.
Okay. Did you want to extend that to the 50 to 100, or just, there's not a whole lot of 50 to 100 lawn, but on the side there's some.
I would like to see it extended to the 100.
Is that acceptable for the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Sorry, who was,
Motion carries.
who moved?
Second. I moved.
Brad, Carolyn, thank you, sorry. Doing double duty here.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Sean, sorry, just Dr. Crane called me at about 5, and I didn't have a chance to call him back, so.
I'll
he
call him
was-
right after
Okay,
this.
I figured you
He's
would.
a nervous now himself.
Can I have any, no, are those your plans? No.
That's the one you just gave.
Actually, can I have those back, because
Yep.
those will be plans. I need 3 copies, thank you. And sign, please. I will draft all of these conditions for you, I'm just having you sign ahead of time, but trust me, I won't go out the door yet. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, moving along.
Now, are we separating these two, or are we going to hear them together?
We could cut it, well, I think we should do the roles, I think we should do them separate.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
agreed to do them separately, although there's reference to what we're proposing to do in the, after the fact, because they are kind of tied together.
Yep.
But we'll try to go through explaining all that in the first one, which would be the after the fact.
Okay. Next, we have a notice of intent for 5 Salt River Lane, proposed fiber rolls submitted after the fact.
So 2 things, thank you, Brad. First of all, it's probably not a conflict of interest, but James, and I don't mean to single anybody out, but I think you're having some work done by Jay Norton in our office. But from my understanding, there's no vested interest in this particular project, so we don't have any issue with that.
Okay.
But I just want to make sure that that was brought up in
Yep.
case later on.
I think somebody else actually has to abstain
Yes.
from this.
Okay,
But
We still have-
I have no problem, you have a quorum, yeah.
okay.
I don't, as long as you both are comfortable.
Yeah,
with it.
Yeah, I don't see any conflict.
I don't see any. And then the second thing is that I want to be explicitly clear that the current owner of this property bought the problem.
Yeah.
This was installed prior to and without his knowledge, and Amy and I did some digging in the conservation files to try to figure out what happened, because a certificate of compliance was actually issued for this particular project, but the fiber roll array that's there now is in conflict to the plan of record that's in the conservation's file. Mr. Russo, in hiring us, has seen the backyard degrade, the fiber rolls degrade, and wanted to do something about it, and realizes that he bought the property with the fiber rolls but unbeknownst to him until we presented with Amy that we're going to change that there was an issue. So Mark said he wants to straighten it out, whatever needs to be done, he's willing to do. But I hope that the commission understands that he stepped forward as the current owner, trying to do the right thing, as opposed to an after-the-fact that he did, that he should take care of. So having said that,
Just to clarify, please.
Sure.
So this cert compliance was for the fiber rolls or for something else?
it was for, from my understanding, it was for, and we have a copy of the plan that Bob Perry submitted, was for the dock, the rock that's behind the dock, and then a fiber roll at the base of the rock that was supposed to go, I think, 1 or 2 fiber rolls beyond the end of the rock to the, in this direction here. But the fiber roll array, as you can see, just, goes all the way to the end of the property.
Yeah, this is no fault of yours, but how did that get it signed off cert? How'd that happen?
I have no.
That's a real good question, because Bob Perry submitted a
time.
photograph. There's a photograph in your records that shows him taking a photograph then from this direction to show the rock and the pier.
Really?
And on that photograph, it shows, you can see the one roll at grade. And then, all of a sudden, the fiber rolls appear. So
It just
we
happened.
tried to dig to find more information out. Mark tried to call the previous owner, but and I think there was, wasn't in Bob's email to you, which you sent to me, he referenced that John Chatham was the agent at the time, and there were some other enforcement issues. But Bob didn't remember what those were.
And
No?
I dug
Yeah.
through, I kept a lot of the stuff that John had, not everything, but I didn't find any written record of enforcement issues. So we could only do so much. We looked pretty hard.
So having said that, I tried to prepare the notice of intent as if the fiber rolls weren't installed, and then went through the process of an alternatives analysis and all that so understand that the fiber rolls are already there. Our engineering firm, with the evidence of how they've already started to fail, would not have recommended that solution in this location. But because we're stuck with it, and Amy wants to clean the record up, and I think the commission does, I said in the narrative that, keep in mind that we're coming forward after this with a different proposal that actually removes those fiber rolls, because they're not functioning well in that location. So the notice of intent for the after the fact goes through the performance standards for coastal bank, coastal beach, riverfront, salt marsh, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Based on the site visits we've had, the fiber rolls have not seemed to have adversely affect the vegetation above, and have not seemed to adversely affect the salt marsh in front of it. It looks like there was an attempt to plant some additional salt marsh in this location, right here, because you can see sprigs of it and some, some slats or whatever, to try to retain the soil of some sort. It's hard to figure out what they were trying to do. But as I say, this was all prior to Mark Russo actually owning the property. So beyond just submitting this to try to clean the record up, the fiber rolls, in our engineering firm opinion, doesn't really work in this location because they're completely inundated. If you noticed, when you were out there, they have kind of started to slump and the fibers are starting to come out. And I did bring in the photograph just to demonstrate.
Everyone was out either today or last time.
Okay. But, you can probably see the photograph from here.
Oh, good, you got it at low tide. I never make it there.
Yeah, it's not, they're seriously not working there. You can't keep them covered because they get inundated. And I think they get inundated because on the outgoing tide, the water comes down the channel. The channel actually comes down this way and makes that turn really sharp. And this is like the zone where the highest speed is. And Mark has said that out at the end of his dock, where the float is, it's really deep right there. So there's a good avenue for water to accelerate and pile up in that location. So that's why the fiber rolls are constantly wet and now completely starting to degrade.
Any attempts over time to nourish them with sand?
But I don't know, Brad, because we don't have any record
Right.
of it at all. So Mark has not, as the owner over the, I think, 3 to 5 years,
He actually, I think he bought it in '09.
09.
So they've
there's-
actually lasted, for fiber rolls, a really long time.
They have, and they haven't
I
been,
could be wrong, but I thought I remember '09.
as far as I know, Mark has not maintained them.
Yeah. I don't think sand, even if you put sand above them, it wouldn't stay there for more than a tide
They're just
cycle or
filling the
two.
channel.
The sand wouldn't stay,
No.
but, yeah.
Sorry. Salt River Lane.
So I'll try to answer any questions.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the procedure down, so even though we did issue a certificate of compliance,
We issued it for, right,
it still
for-
needs an after the fact.
it does, because it didn't cover the extent of what's out there. Again, under the dock, landward of the dock, under it, that stone was permitted. The bit of fiber roll was permitted, but not the extent of the property like it goes. And surprisingly, they have, I'm interested from the engineering standpoint, because a layperson, a person who's not an engineer in the business, they've lasted for, this is more going to the next project, they've lasted for a long time for
Mhm.
fiber rolls. They look better than the ones that are kind of like across the river, honestly.
Up to, yeah, the
Yeah.
doctors own that one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. They're also smaller ones too. But at any rate, this project, it's a pre-78 dwelling. The house was built in 1965. So when you have a pre-78, which is the Wetlands Protection Act, when that really went into full force, when you have a building that's older than that, you're kind of allowed to protect that building from storm damage prevention, flood control. This being as close as it is, in some cases, I mean, the patio is right on the top of the bank. The house itself is 10, 15 feet back. This would definitely qualify for some sort of shorefront protection because of the age of the structure. Can't really penalize people for building houses before the regulations went into place. So I think that this would have been, at the time, if the cods say, so this is older than 2009. But I wouldn't say probably that much older than 2009, the fiber roll array.
You think it's before 2005 these were installed?
Before '09.
Oh, 09.
09, yeah.
I'm not positive, but I think the commission back then in the early, the 2000s would have permitted this, the fiber rolls as done. It's fairly minimal. They're not very high. As you saw today, half of them are covered at high tide. They did stabilize the top slope. The top slope at the very base of it, where the fiber roll meets, is starting to slump. There's a lot of oaks in there that are juvenile, and as they get bigger, they're just gonna. My fear is that they would end up pulling the bank, honestly. But we'll talk about that at the next application. But I think what they did here would have been approvable back in the early 2000s. Because of the age of the house, because of the closeness to the top of the bank, and because fiber rolls are considered a soft solution, and the state and the town always want you to try a soft solution first, if you can, before going to a hard solution. So without getting too much into the next project, I would recommend approval of the rolls after the fact, just to close it out.
Sure. Any comments, Jim?
Yeah, it seems to make sense to approve the after the fact.
Are you abstaining? Okay. Paula?
No.
Other comments?
No comments?
Okay, do we have a motion?
The motion would be to
To,
approve the after-the-fact
Those.
installation of the fiber rolls.
yeah?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the after-the-fact installation of the fiber rolls at 5 Salt River Lane.
Second.
Second that? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have 4 ayes.
And one abstention.
One abstention, so the motion carries.
4-0.
Okay, we'll carry right on into the companion notice of intent, 5 Salt River Lane, which is proposed shoreline protection, shorefront protection.
Don Monroe from Coastal Engineering and Angela from Genic Studios. So Mark hired us to look at an alternative to the fiber rolls because he wants them taken out because the failure of the fiber rolls has caused a failure in couple with the drainage issue that Genic Studio is going to address from the house to the top of the bank. When you were out there, if you noticed that the area is constantly wet, there's moss growing all over the back area, and there's signs of soil failure under the wall that exists in this location, right? That little pump out wall. Right here. The patio is in various stages of undulation. There's a tree that's growing right up with the roots coming right under the patio that have uplifted some of the patio stone. The drainage from the roof goes right to the backyard. The slope of the backyard goes right to the bank. So the upper erosion is adding to the complexity of the bank. And with the fiber rolls not holding and retaining the material behind the bank, it warrants us to look at solid or harder solutions for flood control and water at the toe of the slope so that we can stabilize that so that any work that's done up above is now stable so that we can get some better plantings growing to soak up and take up the drainage. In addition to that, Sean, who was here before, he looked at the drainage in the back of the yard and what we're doing, and Angela will speak to more of detail about that, but we're taking the roof drain that's on the north side of the house, and we're going to pipe that into a basin or a catch system that's under the proposed change in location of the slate patio. So that'll all be water being infiltrated there into a drainage system that we want to design. We didn't come up with the design at this point, but we will design it so that it will take the water from the roof as well as any water that's coming down the slope. But we needed to present it in this way to the commission because it's all a function of the grading that we're trying to redo in the backyard. So we also would like to take the substantial sized oak trees that are on the bank that are adding weight to the bank that we can't support with fiber rolls. And since we're going to take those out, we want to replant it with native vegetation that's lighter and lighter duty but have a better root system to hold the bank in place above the wall. And then the wall's proposal is to keep the soil intact above the wall so that we can establish some kind of structural integrity so that the backyard work that Angela's going to present will actually have a chance to take hold. So in a nutshell, we're taking a riverfront area that's substantially, in my mind, degraded and trying to reestablish it with some entities that are conducive to the owner using the backyard still with the patio proposal, but I'll have Angela speak to that because we actually have a reduction in the amount of hardscape overall, and we're also offering up a substantial square footage of planting in lieu of the grass area that's there, and we're also replanting the top of the coastal bank down to the top of the wall with a substantial number of native species. So with that, I'll let Angela speak to the planting plan and the backyard renovation that's being proposed. And she's got a really nice color coordinated plan right here to help you guys understand how there's a reduction.
So the blue area on the plan is the newly proposed patio shape, and the red line is the existing patio. So we're pulling it back away from the top of the bank, and we're shifting it over slightly, and that is because of the way the columns from the deck above fall. It's not an efficient layout where it is now. But there is an overall net reduction in the amount of square footage for that patio. And you can see, I don't know if you can see from there, but there are two different colors of green. The darker green that's along the top of the revetment is a mix of native erosion control seed mix and shrubs, native shrubs. And that is the area that is being restored, that's now currently vegetated, but will be put back after the revetment is built. And the other area that's closer to the house, that green area is all currently lawn, and we're proposing to establish that with the same plant mix, erosion control, seed mixes, grasses, wildflowers, shrubs, and so that hopefully that whole area of buffer can help soak up some of the water that's coming down. There's also a proposed trench. It's basically an opening in the patio that will be filled with stone. It's a large joint in the stone so that water can fall through, and underneath will be perforated pipe wrapped in filter fabric that will go to the dry well, so that any of the water that happens to fall on the patio and is washing towards the bank will go into that drainage trench. I think that's we added a gravel path from the upper lawn area down to the existing dock, and that's just basically a way for them to get down to that dock area without wearing into the lawn.
It's presently lawn,
It's presently lawn.
Yeah. Proposing to go to gravel.
In that path area, yes. And I think that covers it.
Just Amy brought up, she's interested in the engineering part of it. Anything that's a soft solution in this environment with how much water and how much saturation takes place in the soil, we can address the saturation factor, but we also need to address the drainage aspect of it so that we're trying to elevate the backyard as much as we can, minimizing the amount of fill. But in order to accomplish that, we need some kind of structure underneath, which is the revetment, and we've tried to slope that such that it's a little bit steeper than normal. But because we don't have any real wave action, we're not worried about the steepness of that. But at the same time, we're providing a substantial amount of pore space in the rock so that the salt marsh in the front won't be adversely affected by scour. And I think that we'll be doing a better job than the fiber rolls that are there now, because they've saturated so much that they're reflecting any energy back towards the salt marsh, and it's not seemingly adversely affecting it. So our proposal with the wall, with the pore spaces, is actually going to bring energy into it, dissipate the energy, so that any reflection back shouldn't disturb the salt marsh. We are also proposing to extend that salt marsh in this photograph down in this direction here. And we've used this kind of marsh pillows in the past. So that's a section view of the marsh pillows that we use, like over at the project in Allen Harbor, where Seth put some marsh pillows there, and they're doing really well.
Yep.
So that's the idea, is try to get the marsh to actually extend down even further, so that we're adding to the resource areas as much as possible in that location. So if you take a look at that photograph, you can see the scour that's right under the root system of that heavy oak. There's a gap now that's probably about a foot wide.
See that.
That's eventually going to fall. So before we see it fall into the river, we want to take it out. In that same location, I had the guys do a Photoshop. This is what we hope it'll look like. I want to pass that around.
Yeah, if you actually would pass both of them around, Don, that would be great. Every time I go down there, it's high tide.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go. So if you want to, so our intent, hopefully, it's a low profile wall. It's not a very high wall, but it's high enough to resist any increase in elevation during storm events from, the high, the pressure. There's not really any wave action, but Mark has said that he's seen the water go up relatively high on the fiber rolls just because of the amount of water that can go in during a storm event and then rush out.
Yeah.
Any comments, Amy?
A couple. So, where do I start? Actually, questions first. What size of the stone are you using?
Oh, that's on, should be on the plan.
It should be. I figured you might know.
Yeah, the toe stones are 3 to 4 ton.
Yeah.
Those are 2 by 3 by 3.
Yep.
They're not that large. But they're heavy enough to
Sure.
give us the density we want. And then the armor stone,
The armor stone's
that's
not
like no more than 2 ton. So those would be probably like a 2 by 2 by 2 maybe.
So not huge.
No.
Okay. And it would be constructed to be, I would say, a very rough face in this.
Yes.
In this case.
Yes, points up.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What is the slope after you? What's your finished slope there?
Okay, on the section view, the backyard.
Yep.
We've got a very gradual slope.
Yep.
As far as we can go and still maintain a backyard, but then it goes, so that's about 10 feet.
Yeah.
Where we're going like maybe a 10 to 1.
Yep.
But then because of the constraint of the
Sure.
space, we go to a 3 to 1 slope with soil down to the top rock. And then the face of the rock is a 1 to 1.
1 to 1.
Yeah. And we need the 1 to 1 just to be able to build it out
I was
far
gonna
enough to
say.
give us enough room to actually work with.
Bare minimum.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Pardon my stuffiness. So, like I said before, it is kind of amazing that these have lasted in this high velocity location. It's the bend of the river where everything speeds up. The river's trying to push and migrate in this direction, but it can't. But it is amazing that they've lasted as long as they have. We'll jump to the planting. I think the planting will actually be a huge improvement to habitat diversity on the site. It's predominantly oak with some invasives there, which are definitely valued. I know we'll probably hopefully keep some of that, especially towards the sides. But I can see when they get big, they get unwieldy on a very steep slope. It's not the best to have them there anyways. And what you've proposed on your planting plan is just, it's going to be a really nice mix of native grasses and shrubs that will provide a good root structure, but also really great habitat value. So that's awesome. And you're giving up some of the patio and lawn area, so that's even better. The only real question that I have, I see now, it's degrading to the point where it's either going to be replaced, and the question is then, and fiber rolls don't last usually that long, you'd be in there replacing it again, doing more disturbance. All the plants would have to, be compromised if you did that again. Or rock is typically more of a 30-year type solution. The only concern I have really is the salt marsh and any type of refraction there might be in damaging the salt marsh. So understanding it's a pre-78 structure, you've tried a soft solution that's failing. I would just like some sort of monitoring, in the very least, some sort of monitoring of that salt marsh.
Definitely. Agreed, totally.
And hopefully maybe even enhanced planting if things are successful there. That's my biggest concern is on the northerly side is the extent the rock is before it starts to transition just to fiber roll. So
That end also, we're tapering that down.
right,
So it's not going to be the full height.
that's better.
Right. So in this location, up to about the middle of the marsh,
Yeah.
where actually, no, yeah, at the middle of the marsh is about the same, we're carrying the height that you see in the photograph. But at the middle of the marsh, that's when we drop it down in profile like we did over at the Weechmere Pines.
Yeah.
In, Weechmere Harbor, where we drop that right down into the ground, so that any overwash that takes place will roll up in that location, and then we'll be relying on vegetation to dissipate any energy.
Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you, Amy. I think I'm going to start off with a couple points because I do think that this is something that we need some more information on particular things. So I don't expect to call for a motion tonight. I'd like to have the commissioners just think about questions that they do have, because I have some things I'm going to call for. I do think that my impression is the fiber rolls have worked well at this location for 10 years, and so I'm not certain at this point whether I would advocate supporting the request for stone versus just replacement of the fiber rolls. So I would like to ask for an independent expert opinion from the Woods Hole Sea Grant for this project.
Greg Bourbon?
Yes.
Yep.
I would like to, I'd really value his opinion on this question because I think that it makes a lot of sense, work needs to be done, and the question is, did those fiber rolls really do an adequate job? And it seems like they did a decent job. I'm also concerned about sending energy to the adjacent property. If you look at that rendition of how it will look, you will have some energy going downriver to the adjacent bank, and I'd like to have some type of a analysis on what we can expect from that erosion to go downstream, and maybe Bruce can do that, or maybe you guys can come back with that information. And I guess the third thing I'm interested in is, do we have alternatives to the gravel on the pathway? Because it's presently in the 0 to 50. It's grass presently. I think we allow the pathway, of course, but to put stone in that entire footprint, I think I would like to just hear from the other commissioners and hear alternatives for that. So those are three issues and also we just received these plans tonight, so I think we haven't had a chance.
They were in a previous packet.
They were?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't get them before. Did you folks see these before tonight?
No, I did have this.
Okay.
I didn't, because I was not at the previous meeting.
Yeah, I don't remember which one, if it was April 4th or March 21st, but.
Okay.
I have a question on that, though, Brad. It looked to me that the bank is not holding. So I'm not sure I could say that those fiber rolls look like they were effective.
I think they're failing. They're aged, but the bank didn't seem like. I mean, there was some. It was never nourished for sand, you know, and so the bank to me had some integrity. You had a lot of growth above the fiber rolls.
Carolyn makes a good point, though. There's no structural integrity to fiber roll, so it's not going to hold the bank up. We need to hold the bank up to do the work in the backyard. They may have appeared to stop erosion, but they haven't done the job of what needs to be done in that particular piece of property.
For the future proposal, for what you're proposing.
Yeah, correct.
Right. So
Correct.
I guess to me, they seem to have held the bank for their time there. So to support what you're proposing, you feel like you need the stones.
Yes.
Right.
We do.
I can get Greg down
That's
there, hopefully sometime next week.
Yeah. Can you make sure that we're there when he's there? Is that okay, or
Yeah.
or is it?
I'll ask
copacetic?
him.
Okay.
I'll ask
That's
him.
fine.
Okay.
Let me follow though. Where do you expect the energy created from water hitting those stones to go?
Well, right now, the neighbor's property is eroding back at a rapid rate without any. Yes, without any evidence that it's caused by the wall that's already there.
Mhm.
That's erosion that's taking place that he's gonna need to address if he develops that property. That's natural erosion from the river dissipating the energy after the turn
Mm-hmm.
beyond the wall that's there. So anything that we're proposing, that wall already exists. This wall right here, that already exists.
I guess.
So this energy, this erosion here, that's not happening from the wall, it's happening from the river that's coming around like in this direction, and this is eroding back on a regular erosion rate.
I guess, yeah, you're not answering my question, I suppose. So there's going to be a different setting, and the picture shows a very different setting with the amount of stone. So will there be a change in energy causing different erosional factors
No,
downstream?
because this is a flat-faced wall that's right behind the dock, and that's causing wave reflection. It could be causing eddies around the end of it.
Yeah.
We're doing open-faced points up design so that the energy that comes down this wall is sucked into the wall through the pore spaces.
Yeah, so that's an important question, I think, for
Yep.
the independent expert.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
Any other questions, Carolyn?
No.
Okay, Paula?
No, I'm gonna wait.
Okay. Mark? Oh, yeah. And Jim?
In my few minutes there, it was hard to establish exact status of the bank. Obviously, it basically stayed there for the time the fiber rolls were there. You know, this seems like a well thought out plan. It looks like it'll be the first stone revetment in that area, which is something to consider. And there also appears to be a fair amount of marsh grass already in place out there. It's hard to tell this time of year, but it looks like about 2/3 of the run has some level of marsh grass in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you show that right on the plan?
Yeah.
James?
So
And it isn't the first rock revetment, because there's a rock revetment right,
there's
right behind the
that
pier.
small amount of it.
Yeah.
It extends to the
Yeah,
one right
So,
here.
there's bulkheads on the other side of the.
Yeah,
of the riverway.
bulkheads, which are worse.
Right,
They're high.
because they tend to, the vertical face
The
is.
vertical face.
Yeah. Like I say, it does seem like a well thought out plan, and the plantings seem to be a big improvement. So.
So, can we request,
Yep.
well, let's talk about the gravel. How do people feel about the gravel?
Can I should clarify something about the gravel areas too, because there's two paths. One is on the north side of the house. That one is existing.
Yeah.
And we are just proposing to, there's some existing timber steps, and we're proposing to reorganize those so that they can actually walk underneath the deck, so that they
Yeah.
don't need to walk closer to the bank. And there's a little boulder retaining area at that corner, so I forgot to mention that piece. That's all existing gravel in there. And then it's the south side of the house, that where they're walking now, they just want a way to be able to get the south side of the house. They just want to be able to get from those steps to the, because we're taking away all that lawn area on the other side, so they just want a way to get down without eroding the lawn in that location. If it's not gravel, I suppose they could probably do mulch. I don't know.
Or just stone.
Why do you think it has to be so broad? It's not a path, it's just a very large area of gravel.
That's an existing area of gravel underneath the deck.
Okay.
Yeah, that's there.
Yeah, so the path is
That's
the,
Presley gravel.
Yeah.
that's
all gravel.
existing, it's
Yeah.
underneath a deck structure, there's no exposed soil there. So the path would be just from that small set of steps to the
Okay.
dock.
I think the benefit of it in this particular situation is, as you alluded to earlier, the lot is flat up top, that everything slopes down. So you're getting top-down erosion on this lot too. You're getting water pouring down the hill, both from the roof of the house and the patio, and everything is going. So if we could capture any runoff from the site before it goes to the coastal bank, those plants, either existing or new ones, will do much better.
So I've been there, but I guess I'm not remembering just how it looks. So the proposed gravel path is a secondary path? Because there's a present path that goes directly to the dock, so it's a new access point? Is that,
The path that goes to the dock is from the other side of the house, yes. And so the other path would be new, and that is because they currently bring their kayaks right down that slope, like right all the way down. Like this to get to the dock. And
Yep.
so because we're planting that, they wanted to have another way to get there, and that was what they had asked for.
Okay. In the plans dated March 15th, it shows the deck. Well, I guess they're both March 15th, but this one set shows the deck and the largest set doesn't show the deck. But, all right, I guess I need to get back out there, and I think Amy wants to get out there at low tide.
Yeah, and I'll get Greg out there as soon as possible. I'm actually going to see him tomorrow morning at a conference. So.
Okay.
We could put this, the next available is the 2nd. We could try for that. I don't think he'll have a report done by then, or we could put it on and then if we need to ask for a continuance until the 16th, does that work for you guys? I'm going to shoot for the 2nd
yeah,
of
that's
May,
fine.
but
If we don't make it by the 2nd, then we'll just.
I'd rather put it on and have it there in case.
Yep.
So you would ask for continuance till the 2nd.
Second. So can I request also from you to have a little more discussion on water circulation in the performance standards?
Sure.
Right now, it says it'll stay the same, and just if there could be some, quantified approach to why there wouldn't be more erosion further down. Or I would just suspect with a hard structure, there'd be more erosion occurring.
This doesn't look like an easy site to work on.
It's not.
No.
Because I think what I'd like you to look at when you're out there is what Amy described as the top-down issue.
Yep.
It's major out there. It's more major than you think when you're walking out there, but Mark's been there for a number of years, and he's actually seen the ground decrease in elevation. And that's why fiber rolls won't work, because you can't lock the soil in on the bank with a fiber roll, even if you try to anchor them, because they give. So we need to deal with the upper and the lower, because the lower is losing toe support, but the upper is providing moisture that's going down into the soil and making the soil not structurally sound enough.
How do you propose to bring your machinery in?
That's the access. We've already had 3 contractors down to look at it to make sure that we can do the work. This is the access path right here. We do have a property line restriction, but there's enough room between the corner. It's about 12 to 13 feet. We only need about 8 to 10.
And then a barge, I'm guessing.
No, they're
No, don't need a
rock?
barge.
from the top.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. We've had John Martin look at it, and we've had Denny look at it,
Good.
and Mike Manchuk look
Okay.
at it. So they all have said that
Really?
they can get the rock
I
down
guess
there.
it's small enough rock
Yes.
as opposed to what we see in other places. The outer cave.
Wow, that's surprising.
Well, they're not large. I mean,
They're
when
small.
you think of rock revetment, you're thinking like 5 to 6 ton rock, which are big. These are, 2 to 3. There's not enough wave energy to justify larger than that. But there is enough of a loss of structural stability to warrant rock. The other alternative would be a bulkhead, but as engineers, we couldn't recommend a fiber roll array. We wouldn't be able to retain the soil, no matter how much we planted up above and take out the drainage. There's still going to be an issue with soil structure stability in the backyard.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
So unless you have anything else for them, you would need to continue to the 2nd.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if
Oh, I'm
there's
sorry,
anything
Brad.
else.
There were 3 things, Brad, that you said that you'd like us to address, and let me just make sure I have them. The erosion down on the neighbor's property here, water circulation.
Well, the gravel is, I think, my misinterpretation of where the deck is, so I think I just need to get out there and look at it again.
Okay.
And
That
I
was
don't
the other one's
think it
gravel.
needs any more explanation. We just have to decide whether
Okay.
that's a, adequate disturbance in the 0 to 50. Yeah, I just think, for the commissioners, I mean, this is a big change. It's something that it can be grandfathered, it can be allowed to protect existing structures, but I think it's something we should look closely at.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brad, because the other issue that we didn't even talk about is how close the building is to the top of the bank there.
Right.
It's close.
It qualifies by age, it
Yeah.
qualifies by distance.
Yep.
It's certainly an option to put stone in there, and so I just think that we need to look at it carefully
Yep.
and make sure.
And I like the monitoring of the salt marsh, because even with a rock revetment in front, if you can get salt marsh to grow in front of it, you've got additional wave dissipation energy, which we really want.
Yep. Exactly.
And also, it's very interesting just from the standpoint that they had fiber rolls there for 10 years that functioned, I think, fairly well. And that's instructive. I mean, this is going to keep coming up before us, what to do with these banks. And
Yeah.
so I think it's important not to rush this one, and to, if you have any questions or things you would like to ask, take your time. And I do apologize for not having looked at these earlier, but I don't think I had these larger plans till now. So I want to spend some more time. I want to go back out to the site and take a look at it at low tide. But I think some quantification of what circulation will do with the harder structure on that bend would be helpful, and that's what Bruce Berman will look at as well. Okay, I move that we continue to March 2nd.
May. That would be bad.
Yeah, let's move, that's way off. May 2nd, 2018. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye. Thank you. And I will ask Greg if other people could be in attendance.
Yep.
And if the commission wants to come too, I just have to post it if more than 2 of you come.
Let us know. If we can, we will. If we can't,
Yeah, I have no problem posting it. I'll talk to him in the morning. You guys can feel free, I apologize if it was on my end, I don't know what happened with the plans. You can feel free to keep these, if somebody wants them.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
I'll get some more.
Mr. Chair, for the next 3, maybe we had, because they're all really one project, would you like to announce each of them?
Sure.
We'll do them all together.
Okay, for the next notice of intent, we have 3 we're going to hear combined, and they're all for the properties of 17 and 23 Soundview Road. And we have proposed vegetation management and establishment of view corridor for both properties. Good evening.
My name is Paul Ayub, and I live at 23 Soundview Road along with my wife Jane. And the rest of the entourage is Stephanie Sequin from Ryder Wilcox, who's been our engineer, and Lindsay Strode from Cape Organics, who you may know, who served on this board a while ago. And then Jennifer Taylor Chason, who is the owner of 17 Soundview Road. So we...
Can I just...
Oh, yeah.
Hi, good evening. Since Don Monroe brought up, Ryder and Wilcox recently did some surveying for Mr. Donovan, so I just wanted to point that out, and I have no problem with him being on the building, so just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And it is good to see all of you here. It's nice to have a quorum. So I have this plan, which is what you have in black and white. But I have it replicated. So can I just give you each a copy? That way you don't have to worry about looking at it from here.
Sure.
It's similar to the plan you already have, but I just thought it would make it easier to track these 3.
What color coded?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
All right, so let me just make a quick overview of what's going on here, and then I'm going to ask Stephanie and Lindsay to give you the details, and then we'll answer any questions you have. So, so just to orient you, this is 23 Soundview Road here. This is 17 Soundview Road here. Okay, 23 and 17. And we're asking for 3 different. We have 3 different. We're asking for 3 different orders of condition. One is the first one on the list is called View Quarter A, which is this yellow view quarter. Okay, it's really, I'm going to say this in a very simplistic way, which is how I understand it, really pruning and maintaining a pruned view quarter. The second is view quarter, I don't want to, is everyone with me on this? All right, okay. Second is view quarter B, which is from 23 Soundview Road going straight out. And again, there's no removal of any trees or anything, but this is really mostly removing, cleaning out a lot of the, cleaning out and opening up a view. And then view quarter C is over at 17 Soundview Road here. And this does involve removing 4 trees. Half of one has already been removed by Mother Nature. Yeah. So we just have to remove the other half. And then also opening up a bit of the view here. So that's what's going on. The reason we're doing these together is because before we purchased 23 Soundview Road, and then subsequently in 2011, 2012, and 2015, we got administrative consent, I think that's what it's called, to do some vista pruning in this yellow area that would be view quarter A. And when I talked to Amy about doing this again, she said, you know, if we're going to be doing this on a regular basis, you really ought to file with the Conservation Commission and seek an order of conditions, and let's do it, I mean this the right way. Let's really do this comprehensively with the right kind of pruning and plantings, and be sensitive to the area and erosion, and let's look at it long-term, not short-term. And it made a lot of sense to do that. And then we thought, well, if we're going to come before you to do that, is there anything else that we want to do? And let's just do this all at once and have it one comprehensive plan. So we thought, well, what we may want to do, what we would like to do is open up a bit of a view in front of 23 Soundview, and also at the same time, very small in our mind, but there's some failing asphalt under a deck at 23 Soundview where there's a garage there, an unusable garage. And there's some asphalt that's falling apart, and we propose putting pea stone there. And then when you come out of the basement entrance, there's a shower, and we had some wooden slats there. We would get rid of those and put some stepping stones. So really making more of a pervious surface all there. And so then we, because we're crossing over our neighbor's property, Jennifer's property, we talked to Jennifer about what she may also want to do. And so that's why we thought, well, and we're going to get into details. And so I'm really trying to keep the big picture first, okay? Remove 4 trees and open up the view. One thing you should know is back in 2002, the owners of 17 Soundview actually did get an order of conditions, and now there's a certificate of compliance on record to maintain a view easement, a view here. And I think it allows for vista pruning to be allowed every 2 years, and bittersweet will be allowed to be controlled every 2 years. We're trying to extend that area throughout all of this. But in extending it, we're also subjecting this to your current kind of conditions. In other words, right now there are no conditions. Every other year they can come in and prune. And I know that what you will have are conditions about letting Amy know and having it signed off every year. And they are prepared to do that. So it'll be more restrictive, and also you'll see we have a whole plan of plantings and how we're going to maintain that. So here are the guiding principles. We're at one level we're asking for a lot. At one level we're really asking to just, we hope what you see is we're trying to use best practices versus coming every few years and say, can we prune a few trees? And so we hired Lindsay, who came highly recommended as someone who, having served on the Conservation Commission, understands what best practices is. And Stephanie, who's presumably you're all familiar with and has done a lot in the Cape. And we're trying to achieve sound ecological practices and still have a good view, but also we're concerned about the slope there. So part of what our plan is to remove some of the trees that are invasive, or some of the plantings that are invasive, and replace them with some that are indigenous to the area, but that will help fortify the slope there. So we're really looking at this long term. So we've invested a lot of time in this, actually doing this the right way. Amy knows, because I think we've been talking about this for a couple of years. And we want to do it the right way, and that's how we're approaching this. So I'm going to pause there and ask Stephanie, do you want to? And then Lindsay, you can give the details. Any questions so far? I just want to make sure we're all oriented, because there are a lot of things going on.
I think they've all, either last time or this time, have been to the site, so.
Great. Okay.
Okay. Stephanie Sequin with Ryder and Wilcox. I don't really have anything to add to other than mention, one thing I think Paul forgot to mention, on the bank, there's a stand of infested oak that we're also planning to
On the
remove.
property line between the two of them, they're pretty much dead.
But, so just, I mean, I guess the only thing I can add is, just so you understand what the resource areas are, both these properties overlook a salt marsh abutting the Red River. So we located the bank at the river. The 100-year flood elevation here is 12, which hits into the side of the bank. So by definition, these properties are on coastal banks. So what the plan that we prepared, we're showing the 50 and 100-foot buffers to the top of the coastal bank. Both the properties have existing buildings and established yards within the 50-foot buffer. Most of the property is within the 100-foot buffer to the bank, and the entire of the two properties are within the riverfront boundary. So just the explanation of what the resource areas are here. God bless you.
Bless.
Sorry.
You've been to the property. That's all I have to say, unless you have any specific questions about how we delineated the resource areas or anything like that.
Thank you. Amy, any comments on this one?
Just if Lindsay, if you wouldn't mind describing the plantings. I mean, I know we had it all in front of us, but just if we could get a little overview for the record, would be helpful.
So what Lindsay Strode, Keep Organics, what I will do is just kind of walk you through what I anticipate being the plan as we get in there, should we get approval for this. There is a lot historically of pruning that was just topping. The problem with that is it flushes growth, creates a scaffold, and then you have your requisite bittersweet, wild grape, briar, kind of lope over the top of that, and continue to smother and limit the growth not only of that plant but also of any herbaceous material that's on the ground. So the idea is, once we get approval, we start by actually seeding the whole area that we're going to be working in with not only site-appropriate seeds, but also what I called nurse crops. Not winter rye, but Canadian rye and oats will just actually, as we walk around, as there's any kind of disturbance, that works it into the soil, and then it will actually germinate very quickly and kind of help hold the soil. In addition to that, we will put, as I mentioned, specifically chosen seed as well. That'll act as a nurse crop and help that get going. That'll lie until it has the proper conditions. Again, as we walk and move around, we'll be working that into the soil. So what we'll do is we'll get in there, depending on the time of year, we're going to just start to manage for the invasives. We're going to take care of the bittersweet, the grape. If there's poison ivy, that'll get addressed. And what we're trying to do is open that up so we can actually get to the plants that were pruned typically improperly. You've got scrub oak in there that were cut usually at 4 feet. We'll probably choose the healthiest 2 or 3 leaders, remove the rest, and then prune so that we have some structure and function to the tree. That being said, there's the 4 large pines, or 3.5 large pines that are coming out. The 2 that are right on the coast, right on the edge of the coastal bank, are problematic. Again, any kind of large tree, and you've seen with this last storm, even the pitch pines have blown over and done root throws, which are very unusual. Usually they break off like this one's done. Should we have that at the top of that coastal bank, that's going to, very quickly, compromise the integrity of the coastal bank. So we'd be taking those down, cutting them flush to grade, leaving the roots as they exist in there, and then planting around them with a 2-to-1 mitigation. In a nutshell, that's It sounds a lot easier when you're sitting here, but when you're walking up a
That
2-to-1 slope with poison ivy and
briars, everything else.
builds character.
What will you use to treat the invasives?
The invasives,
And poison ivy?
so the dicots are gonna get something called Garlon. It's labeled for use around and within, I think it's, I forget which one it is, but there's one Garlon 2, I think is the product. It's a triclopyr product, and it's specifically for woody plants. It won't have any, and we would be doing a cut and wipe or a basil bark application. Again, it all depends on the timing.
Yeah, no foliar application.
Any comments for us, Sammy?
Really not too many. As Mr. Ayub said, before me, and then when I first came here, we did this a little bit administratively. They've been very accepting of kind of a comprehensive program here, and understand the benefits of proper pruning practices, not just for view, but for health of the plants as well. And also, I mean, pruning properly will help save them in the long run, because you don't have to prune every single year, most likely. So, I mean, I'm recommending approval for all 3 projects. I forgot to mention at our site today about the removal of the asphalt underneath the deck at 23. They saw the trees over at 17, and I think people are in agreement about the issues there. For the trees that are not proposed to be removed, though, a good point was made on the site about making sure that the ivy and any invasives that are climbing those trees that are in the lawn area, that at least be cut, those invasive vines, to relieve the pressure on the trees going forward. So any of the trees that are not proposed to be removed, that they be assisted. But other than that, I really don't, we've had a good working relationship thus far, and I don't anticipate that to change. They would have to go by our pruning guidelines, pruning down of shrubs, pruning up of trees that are to stay, for removal of invasives. We would look for most likely an annual monitoring report that'll be in the orders of conditions, detailing how the invasive removal is going, what stage of planting you're at, probably a schedule, because the pruning, you don't want to do pruning during nesting season, so we would say, you can't prune between certain dates to avoid any nesting season. But that's really about it.
What's the duration of the order? What would the duration be?
This is going to be it's a standard 3-year, and so after a couple years of maintenance and monitoring, you could always put ongoing conditions on a certificate of compliance for maintenance of the view and keeping the invasives at bay, because it's going to be, it's not just a 3-year thing; it's a continual maintenance thing for a long time, just to keep them.
After 3, would they come back with a new order?
No. So you could do if you were comfortable, if things were going well, you could do a certificate of compliance with ongoing conditions, annual notification of this department when things are going to be done. You have to keep things exactly how the order was permitted. Any deviation would have to be a new permit.
Yeah, because let me be clear, that's part of our motivation to do this. In other words, we'll do all this, and then not to have to come back every time, but just to know, here's the program. And in fact, I think what I've seen this, well, you know better than I, it becomes a condition to maintain the view, but with certain, a condition to maintain the view, but with certain requirements. One, to inform Amy when, who's doing, whatever your standard of practice is at the time.
Right.
I guess my only concern is, would it become basically in perpetuity to just maintain the bank that way? Is that what this would become? And so I'm a little leery of that, because someday there's new property owners, there's new commission members, and so what have we done? I mean, I don't think we've always just had a 3-year permit, and then the cert allows them to continue forevermore. Is that how it's always been?
The commission has allowed extension, and after 3-year extension, after 3-year extension, after 3-year extension, which gets us into the problem that we had over at Permaqueen and other places where, on Lover's Lane, extensions were granted, and really shouldn't have been. So, it's kind of is I've seen pruning, vista pruning, in perpetuity, or as long as they do exactly as the permit was. I've seen that before.
Right.
I'm
What's your feeling
more
on?
concerned about issuing extensions
Right.
all the time than putting ongoing conditions on there.
Right. So you think compliance could be enforceable under the certificate of compliance? You could read
Yes,
it.
you can put ongoing conditions on.
Right.
And it would be something too, I mean, let's go through a year or two, see how everything's going, and we can evaluate it.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, people are going to want to have that view forever.
Right.
So, but how do we maintain the ability to prevent it from being somebody really expanding
Yeah.
what's permitted? That's my concern.
That would get recorded, I mean, we could draft not just the orders of conditions, but a letter to go with a certificate of compliance in the future, though, that gets recorded at the registry. That would be on the property.
Can it also be, should the properties change hands, that
could put
new
a-
people would have to come back in front of the commission?
You could put that as a condition.
But to do what, though? I mean,
Should
If they
your
were to
properties change hands, the order of condition would stop and the new property owner would have to come back in front of us. So that
Typically, the
it's not
conditions
done-
go with the property, with the address,
yeah.
but I'd have to look into that a little
Okay.
bit.
Go ahead.
Well, I was, other towns I know have the condition that we need to notify you once we get approval, who's gonna be doing the
Right.
work. So that you know someone knowledgeable
Yep.
and reliable is going to be doing the work. And if that
Changes.
contract changes, you need to be notified again.
I think that's almost better than whether the owner changes, if it just has to be the same person doing the work.
So we'd have, whoever is going to do the work needs to be approved by the Conservation
Yeah.
Commission agent. I think that's your better protection, because that.
I was just asking, I'm fairly new here, so I'm trying to learn also.
We've had a lot of problems with new ownership, so it is something that pops
Right.
up. We've had a lot of compliance issues with people overcutting when they come in and they're new to that, and
Right.
it happens.
The one thing
But-
that is unique to this, though, is that each year you notify the commission, so Amy comes out, or again, if she's, been replaced, not that you're ever gonna be replaced, but. So each year.
Exactly.
There's not only a monitoring protocol, but at the same time, when the work is gonna be done, it's scheduled.
Yeah.
We do this in the early spring, we do this in the fall, this is what we do in the summer, this is our off-season, and at that point, it's each level is met upon notification, so whether
So there's a
it's me-
check and balance there.
Right.
Okay.
And if the
How's that?
commission wants to help it do these inspections
Well, that was
too,
good.
and I mean, Nikki and I are getting a lot more done now that there's two of us. But,
was
if
my
the
next
commission
question.
wanted to start getting, and other commissions do this, they assign people to, each member to a project to check it every once in a while. That keeps everybody in check.
That was my question. The workload, would this really change your workload to?
So once a year,
I just know there's a tremendous cost to coming forward here.
Yeah.
And to have the next owner have to go do it again after we've just gone through all of this to maintain the beautiful view that we just worked so hard for.
Right.
So it's a huge cost. So
Right.
if we attach it to the deed, or, it's conservation, you don't wanna mess with you guys.
Well, it happens
You'd be
all the time.
surprised. Does happen.
It's amazing how much this goes on with
But
new
if
ownership.
if we put it on the deed, at least there's no way to say that the information's there for that. But we could also, still have annual monitoring, or, annual check-ins and whatnot.
I guess we just condition it to have the certificate of compliance be very explicit towards these annual checks.
Yep.
And if there are any changes in your contractor or what you want to do, then it needs to be revisited.
And if things don't, in the future, if you don't own the properties and it is somebody else, if they do something that's not permitted, that's a violation. And you treat it as a violation. You know,
Okay.
unfortunately, we can't kind of foresee, we've seen it in past, but we can't really foresee the future, so.
Yeah.
And if it's on the deed, then they know that there's something there. It's not like it's just.
Right.
Yep.
Doing a presentation for realtors this Friday afternoon to help educate.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Carolyn, any thoughts? Paula?
No.
No? Mark?
Are there any plans with the, are there any plans with the lawn, as far as I can't remember exactly what the
No.
grass mixture was now?
I don't think we have any lawn. No.
No change?
But the current practices are, it's kind of like a Cape Cod lawn, or?
Jane, you're better at this than I.
What does that mean?
What do you have irrigation? Do you have like a lawn program?
Yes, yeah, we do have irrigation.
Okay. Do you guys fertilize at all, or do you know? I mean, we're trying to get people who live in sensitive areas to go to basically a more natural approach. I mean, if you have irrigation, that's one thing, but maybe to decrease the amount of fertilization or go somewhat organic. We're trying to decrease nutrients that get into the rivers and our embayments, so.
I have a natural lawn program, we'll talk.
Okay.
We've actually already studied.
All right, so if, we would be, I think, very much in favor
Yeah, of a natural lawn
of a
program.
natural lawn program.
Okay.
So it's up to you, Mr. Chair. Actually, what would actually probably be good is we should vote on each of these independently.
So, okay.
Yeah, because they're different addresses, so.
All right, so we'll have to get our conditions, maybe you can help us with the specific language for what we want to condition.
I will. I wasn't gonna, if it's all the same to you, I was gonna take the next 2 weeks to draft them so they can sign them, because there's a lot here.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna make you do these ones tonight.
Okay.
I think that's probably better. 'cause
Is 2 weeks
there's a lot
okay?
going on.
Right.
You'll be approved, but, oh, sorry. You-
No, I think
Bites,
we all support this, and it's,
I apologize.
we just want to make sure we can do it, correctly and not have, future compliance problems, because we've had so many of these in town.
You don't need to do the conditions on the fly tonight.
Okay, good, because I don't know how I'd word that.
Yeah, let's not do this one tonight.
It's been a long day.
But we can vote.
Okay.
Pending those.
I had a question on that former piece that was permitted. So that was basically a in perpetuity type of a...
Yeah, it was very strange. I mean, typically you wouldn't...
Small area.
A very small area, and the way they worded the commission at the time worded the invasive protocol monitoring of every 2 years. I hadn't seen anything like it before, but it's okay. We're all getting under one permit, one slate now.
So this will supersede that in...
Yes.
That has,
That is the intent,
yeah, this will
right.
supersede it. That will become null and void, really.
Okay.
It's a comprehensive program.
Well, who wants to fire off 3 motions? I guess one at a time.
Can I just ask one question?
Mhm.
So I'm sorry, the term you used, the natural fertilization, is that?
Natural lawn
We're not putting
program.
that as a condition though, right? I mean, because none of what we're requesting is lawn, so I just want to make sure we're not,
We're just trying to, I mean, you're
we're
doing,
happy to do it, and, I mean, first of all, we have a little dog, we actually sort of concerned about chemicals ourselves, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure we're not respectfully migrating from what's here and what's here, and so I just in the spirit of making sure we know what the
Yeah.
conditions are or aren't, so.
Well, the footprint that you have marked off for, at the top of the coastal bank there, that's what would receive the seating that you described, once you took the pines down?
Well, actually, it's
Oh,
all
property.
the coastal, the face of the coastal bank
Yep,
is what's gonna be seeded,
right.
that whole area. It'll look really odd. We're gonna be spreading seeds and throwing it over the bank and down the bank amongst all the plant material that's
Right.
existing. That
Right.
looks kinda odd, but then again, as we move around, we prune, we stomp it into the ground.
Right.
And I may also add that in the areas where we do some pruning and it's open, we've also listed out in there, we're gonna do some plug vegetation in the immediate area as well as some seed to mitigate or minimize any erosion.
Okay.
I think you were talking about landward though, correct?
Yeah,
As
it's
kind
just
of,
in the 50-foot buffer zone. or even the whole property, just the basic lawn management.
So I'd say this, we're open to suggestions, but I think in fairness, it's not part of what we're here to talk about, and I'm reluctant, I don't know what it is, so I'm reluctant to make a commitment to it, but I'm not reluctant to be educated in what's best practice. Obviously, if you looked at what we did, we're pretty into doing the right thing, but
Well, yeah, just to, inform you on what we typically do. So for the 0 to 50, we don't allow fertilization really ever. And so that's just a standard practice. In the 50 to 100, it's case by case depending on what's been done in the past, if there's irrigation. So I think you would favor having no fertilization in the 0 to 50, which is where a lot of work is occurring.
Yeah, well, and also as kind of a trade-off in terms of, we don't have to, we can talk about this further and decide whether it's a condition or just something that we're going to encourage and get more education on. But if you're asking to do work on the coastal bank in a very sensitive area in order to get a view, the commission can ask for mitigation on the property to kind of, you get this, but we're improving the environment additionally by doing this. So in terms of lawn care, that's one way that we're trying to do that. We're trying to, as much as we can, go to a natural lawn care system. So if you want to talk with Lindsay about that, I mean, nothing is going to get, we're not doing the conditions tonight.
Yeah.
So it's, if it's something you want to talk about more with your representative, you can. The commission may decide, may not want, or decide to go that route.
I
but-
think in the 0 to 50, it's just routine.
Yeah.
Would you propose for what you want to do to have some fertilizer occurring there?
On the, relative to what we presented,
Mhm.
there is no fertilizer plan.
Okay.
Our amendments are gonna be compost
Right.
and rooting stimulant. That's it. It's a mycorrhizal product.
Okay, well, that's good, and so it wouldn't conflict with what you're hoping to do. It's a fairly routine condition for activity in the 0 to 50.
Okay.
There's a lot you could do with composting,
Yeah,
believe it or not.
Red River has a tremendous problem with eutrophication. The beach, the swimming area, eelgrass. Eelgrass has been degraded tremendously in recent decades. This drains to Red River Beach, so we would like to reduce that nutrient loading as much as possible. So I think it's a common condition. Above the 50, I don't think there's really is there much activity in the, I guess a little bit in the 50 to 100.
They're not doing anything in the 50 to 100, no.
Right.
I mean, that's fine if you want to,
Yeah.
I mean, we want to do what's right here.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant, I just
You'd be surprised that it actually
want to
is
make
nice.
sure I know what I'm agreeing to, that's why I'm at, but I totally understand and I agree with you.
Right. There's a lot of degradation occurring because of over-fertilization, so it is a routine condition.
And there's a way to still have a nice, lawn area without all the input. So Lindsay can tell you more about that.
Okay.
Fair enough. All right, so, but we'll draft the conditions and we'll go from there.
Yep.
We're not at that point yet, so it's, certainly we could chat a little more about that.
So, should we vote on it before they're drafted?
Well, you're voting just pending the orders, so you haven't signed,
Right.
like we normally do. You vote, and then I draft the orders, and then you vote to approve the orders.
Okay.
This is just to get them
I'm a little
going.
confused as to what the 3 orders would be.
It's just the 3 different addresses. So like,
Okay.
so it's 17 and 23, then 17, then 23.
2 different addresses.
2 different addresses, 3 different orders, because one of the orders encompasses both addresses.
Yeah.
Because it's the view corridor that goes across both properties.
Okay.
You want to take a shot, Carolyn? No?
Me.
Well, I move we approve the notice of intent for 17 and 23 Soundview Road, and we will prepare the order of conditions to discuss at the next meeting.
We are
One at a time.
not at the same time, separately.
So that's the one for the view corridor in yellow.
In both, yep,
Goes
yep.
across both
Mhm.
properties.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, it's unanimous for the first.
Oh yeah, you can vote on this one, that's right, right? Okay, I'm sorry.
For the next notice of intent for 23 Soundview Road, I move that we approve the notice of intent as described.
I'll second that.
Second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries again. And then thirdly, for the notice of intent for 17 Soundview Road, I motion that we approve the notice of intent. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All three motions carry. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you, Amy, for all
Of
your guidance.
No problem.
Amy's
So
been
we'll,
great for this process, I will tell you.
I don't mind coming to your property. So it's funny, I brought them there, a couple of them there today, and you know, from the front, you really can't see anything. And I'm like, wait till you go around the back, wait till you stand on the deck.
Yes, that's nice. That's why we're willing to invest in it, to make it right, too.
Yeah,
It's long.
makes a lot of sense.
Of course it is. Please go.
I saw your property, I didn't understand the name of the street.
Oh, right.
I would
right.
love for you to do that, because we're gonna be changing our regulations
Neighbor
on
across the street who put in a pool.
lawns, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Right.
different
I'm staying.
viewpoints, so to have a professional come in and do it, that would be wonderful.
You let me know when I can help.
All right, we'll do a business meeting soon.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yep, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Oh, I gotta get your hat.
Oh,
After months and months. Give me a minute. He left his hat here months ago, I still have it.
Can I just say, this must have been a long night for you guys. I've never been to anything like this. No, it was fascinating.
Jane now wants to be on the con
Please.
Fiber rolls, are they just,
You have no
do you have
idea.
an ecological problem with fiber?
No, can be a coconut product. It's natural. It's, it just doesn't last forever, so that's why they're coming back asking for a stone, solution as opposed to fiber.
You may have another member of the con.
No, I was looking up the address.
So the gentleman who was sitting in the back is a
Right.
hopeful other alternate too, Mr. Ketchum, who was sitting in the back.
And sometimes we go a lot later, so this isn't bad. 10:30, falling asleep here, so we try to.
So, Jane, shall we copy this? Sure. Let me grab my plan here.
Oh,
Thank you for the color.
Yeah, no, it helped me to figure it out too. Thanks.
Good night.
All right, have a good night.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, boy. Kind of a marathon, huh?
What's that?
These things are kind of a marathon, huh?
They can be, and we move through those quickly.
Yeah.
They could have been a little more discussion
I
on.
thought that went along fairly smooth.
It did.
Quick.
I lost some of the fight in me on a couple issues. I decided to hold my powder till later. There's a couple issues there that the overwash bulkhead is really a variance. We typically would not approve that. I don't know if we're still on. I guess we are. But I think the dredging in that case is a positive feature to the project. So, but that's one that could have taken another half an hour discussion easy.
The one with the
The,
Paver
the,
rolls?
the over, well, that too, but they're going to come back to us.
If this works, then it's good. If it doesn't
Yeah.
hurt anything, then it's good.
The overwash bulkhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we just don't know until it's.
And it is a structure in the resource area that we don't often.
Might be doing good.
I think, yeah, it could be benign, and I think the dredging could be positive.
Yeah.
So,
And it's not good to have to dredge every 2 years.
Constantly.
right. But for the purpose at which he's using that, for the average recreational dock, we wouldn't have supported that.
Right, but where it's a
Yeah.
working dock.
So it's interesting.
I don't know if we can't discriminate.
It-
No, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah, so yep, so I don't.
I wasn't really well prepared for that. Did I even vote on that? But I wasn't well prepared for that particular.
I held back because it's a pretty beat-up part of the harbor. There's not a lot of places in the harbor where I would support the overwash bulkhead. And also it was a big night. I didn't feel like
That was the one that we couldn't vote on, so I hadn't even
Right.
seen it or anything. But,
the fence in the 0 to 50 is something.
Not so bad, guys.
Not so
I
bad.
know, we
I would've
moved it along.
like the scene because that's a pretty sensitive property. There's Atlantic white cedars starting to grow
Yeah.
into the lawn, which would continue if, but due to the legal things, it seems to be.
Right. I think because we had that corn problem that
We did them on Friday. Do you want to, if it was okay with you, to move some of these along that have been prolonged today? I did put, we've signed the orders of conditions, or you've signed the permits, but do you want to go quickly back through some of the ones we approved tonight and tell me, aside from the normal, like, have a meeting with Amy, you know, put up your silt fence, the normal stuff, do you want to quickly go through and give me some specifics?
which ones are you,
Let's do, not the RDAs, those are fine. 254 Bank Street for Mr. Corliss. I know he's itching. So I would talk about pool. Pool water removal would have to be off-site. I suppose
Do we have general regulations for pools?
that kind of is.
Yeah.
Are there any specifics regarding the volume of water for a pump down, given the size of the pool?
Not in conservation.
Well, if you're gonna take 3,500, anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 gallons of water out of the pool at winterization.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do with it?
That's what I'm saying, you gotta take it off-site.
can't pump it in the wetland?
A lot of people just let it drain on site, and,
Where?
Down the,
can't.
down the
Right,
street.
yeah.
It's,
Or it has to be outside the 100-foot buffer, which he has room outside the 100-foot buffer to do it on his property.
Okay, so is he gonna go into a drain down pit?
I don't know,
There
I
isn't
didn't see
any
his
provision on the
plan.
plan for that.
There is?
No, there isn't.
Oh. I think because I had told him when he planned for this, that he would essentially probably be made to truck it off-site.
Truck it, yeah.
And he was okay with that.
Okay.
What we've seen too many times, a lot of them don't, not that much.
No,
Mark
he
does
has a-
pools.
He has a top
Right,
over the water.
right.
I know
I've
That's
answered
not
our
an
question.
safety cover, that's got nothing to do with winterization.
With winterization.
That's not something you would use in the off-season, that's only in-season. The cover's actually designed to float on the top of the water.
Right. Does it make a difference whether it's a gunite or it's the vinyl? Doesn't,
No.
because I know my son has a gunite and they reduce it very little.
The
Yeah.
procedure's gonna be the same.
Same.
Okay.
Okay.
What we've done to avoid any issues of drainage into the wetland, because we've seen it so many times. I mean, we saw somebody draining their pool into Snow Inn Road, and it went right down a drain into Winchmere Harbor.
Plus.
We
Yeah,
just
it
say
seems
take
like
it
it
off
should
site.
go off-site.
We just cut to the,
One way or
Don't
the
even
other,
deal
it's
with
gonna
it.
end up in the wetland if it's on site.
yeah, we just don't usually deal with it. We get a couple pools a year, it's not substantial. And if I see, water running down the road or your property, we had one on Snow Inn too, wasn't the same one. They let the pool drain, and, they put the hose at the top, and the driveway was sloped like this, and it was a paver driveway. The volume of water was so great coming out of that pool, it destroyed the pavers of the driveway, it knocked them out.
So other than that.
So roof runoff, huh?
Other than the ordinary pool stuff. does he-
Well, the plantings, I was gonna talk about the native planting strip. I have to go back into his plan and see if he was, I think what I had done is I said, if you were to propose plantings, you have a fairly shaded, damp spot, here's what I would recommend, and I'm pretty sure he used those. It's been a little while since I've reviewed it, but I'm pretty sure he used stuff like sweet pepper bush, which is, it could be wetland or upland plant, high bush blueberry, things of that nature on his buffer planting. He loved the idea of the blueberries, so.
For a couple of-
Survivability of plantings.
For a couple of the things tonight, we didn't have exact planting plans.
Right.
which,
Mark did, but-
Over the years, we have requested before we.
Mark did have a plan. Mr. 254 Bank did have a planting plan. Cranes could have been more specific. I think by us saying you can't remove any vegetation until we get a plan and approve it.
Yeah,
That's
what I agree-
okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
We typically, we were a little bit lax tonight, I think, on the plantings.
I didn't insist, I really want to see the plan that would show keeping those beach plums.
Oh,
But
that,
But I
I won't let him get away with that.
I gathered that, but normally
I
that's
won't let
something
him
where I
get
would
away.
say, I want to see that. But I
Those
think
beach plums will stay.
we were trying to move some things along tonight.
As
so-
long as that's in the order of conditions, isn't
You know, if it's not in the plan, you can see some things pop up down the road, and,
Sometimes if they're in one, not the other.
right, Amy's got to be diligent. You know, I think.
That's why I'd like
things
to
happen
see a
with your-
revised plan.
Right, things happen with your
Tell them they
predecessor
had to.
where.
Of course.
Or the conditions and the plans didn't jive and things, you know, got
Well,
sloppy that way.
nobody's, yeah, it's really hard when you see the volume of permits that we, you know, just myself and now Nikki have to do, and now we review every building permit that comes in too, to make sure it has nothing to do with us. We check every permit that comes into this floor to make sure it has, gets us in a way for us to check to make sure nothing gets passed. We started that about 2 years ago. I said, we're gonna, even if it's just a simple address lookup, okay, you wanna rebuild your house, okay, it's way in the upland, but at least now we know.
Right.
Yeah.
We've avoided a lot of things by doing that. Anyway,
Yep.
for bigger, see for the cranes on Walder Road, if they were increasing the square footage of their disturbance in the 100-foot buffer and we needed to do planting, then I think, but they're almost not required necessarily to do mitigation, but because they're reducing, but
Reducing the
they
height.
should keep the beach plum that are starting to establish there. Not all of those beach plum were originally there, but because the site has been left vacant and not touched, it's really
Yeah, it's
prospered.
Now there's native. How does that come into play when something's been left for several years and now there's a nice native habitat
Right.
there? Is that now protected or is it not protected?
This, it should be. This one is a little different because technically, right now, they have an active order of conditions with their old permit
Yeah.
to go in there and remove,
They
because
could.
back then it was lawn. So
Yeah.
right now, they technically could go in there and remove everything. But if this was, if this was their first go-around with us, and as we saw it, we would, I think, be a little more stringent on.
Yeah.
They seem amenable to leaving each corner.
Yeah.
We had some really
Yeah.
good applicants tonight.
Yeah.
I'm sorry we couldn't get on the property there.
Well, hopefully we can, we will be soon.
Couldn't drive in, or you just couldn't?
Couldn't.
Couldn't drive in.
Well, we
and-
kind of did, last time when you came, we kind of like looked over the fence because it was
Yeah, I just hopped over. It
chained, yeah.
was pretty easy to get there. You know what's
We should
interesting?
have hopped over closer to the road.
Right.
Yeah.
There's
By the time we got up to the water, the vegetation on the other side was.
Too thick. Yeah.
Wow.
We were back in the bramble.
You know what's interesting? That they're not pushing back. With all the money they're spending, moving the septic wouldn't be a big deal.
I know.
That site gets pounded by storms.
I've
Salt.
always asked that, I'm like, but
Yeah.
legally, they have this house that's so close, so if they're to improve it, we can't really deny it.
No, I
But
didn't.
this site is huge. I would put my house 100-plus
So
feet
far
back
away.
Right.
and have plenty of room.
Right, just that the house gets
They do
pounded.
have a revetment, but,
Yeah,
the
I'm
wind
surprised.
even. The wind from where we started at the car, from when we got to the edge of the bluff, was like substantially more.
I always hated that pool, and I always was mad that it was approved in the 0 to 50. I think when it was approved, it wasn't a no disturb zone,
No.
but it still had lots of protections in the
It
Wetlands
was
Protection Act.
pre-04.
Yeah, still plenty of protections, and it was put in there, so I'm psyched it's being.
I think that house was
pulled
only
out.
built in like '99. It's not an old house.
No, it's not.
Just the water damage.
Right.
And, oh, the house has been in London.
That
I think
one?
there was a major
Yeah.
renovation.
Well,
Really?
no, maybe not.
Maybe a major
There was
renovation?
There was a previous house there.
Okay.
There was a
But this
there,
house, as
and
it
had a
stands.
kennel.
The-
It had a kennel, do you remember?
Yeah, the pool
dogs?
approval's pretty recent, I think.
With the pool, but.
That must have been the
this
renovation.
house, But a previous house, and it was a low
Huh.
slung, because my friends owned the house
Yeah, right next door. You knew.
It was a low slung thing, and they had a kennel toward the road, and dogs barked all the
Oh,
time.
jeez.
And that would have been, early 80s.
Well, the Cranes wanted to be here tonight. They were here for they were going to be here for the last one, but they couldn't. They're over on the vineyard, and they couldn't make it over tonight, so they wanted to be here.
I have to tell you though, not having gone on the tour today,
Different, huh?
terrible.
A lot of the ones you've been, a couple of the ones you've been to, because we went last time.
Yeah,
But,
but I felt like I was behind the 8 ball.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
It
hard.
really does.
Okay.
What else,
They
Amy?
were amenable to the native grass mixture and
Yeah.
all those conditions too.
Yep. His wife is very into organic gardening, and we talked about that for a while.
Who's that?
Like Dr. Crane's wife
Oh,
for Walder Road. Okay, so
Amy, the gentleman whose name was Lindsay,
yeah,
I don't remember hearing before about planting seed on
just to
coastal banks.
yeah.
it's
Is it regular grass seed that he's
no,
putting in?
it's
or
it's
is
more
it
of a
seed?
meadow mix.
Okay.
Actually, it's getting pretty popular. It's not just going to be seed; it will be shrubs too.
Yes, I knew that.
But that's just to help like in the meantime, it's a quick growing thing, and grasses actually have really deep roots.
Deep root.
So all it is really just in the meantime when it's smart, because a lot of companies will remove the invasives, strip it, put down matting to hold it, maybe put some seed there too, but then spot treat the invasives. He's getting a jump start on this bank stabilization with the grasses by doing what he's doing.
Was this something we should be asking?
Well, he actually, yes,
Harry River.
yeah, right. Yes, we probably should.
I'd never heard that.
He is one of the only ones that I know who does it like that. They all plant grasses, but not immediately. They don't okay, as I'm tromping, it makes sense. As you're tromping around on the slope,
Yeah, it's not gonna hurt the grass.
just that way you tromp the seed in, it gets a head start.
Yeah.
He did offer to me if you guys ever wanted, can't pay him or anything like that, but he was a member of this commission. He is very good at what he does with Cape Organics, and he has offered to do a lawn care kind of 101 for you guys.
I would love that.
I would
On
too.
the other hand, he's one individual business.
Well, he would tell you what might work in
Different areas.
in our type of high drought exposed situations. I'll talk to him more about it. I think education's a good thing, especially if we're talking about doing our regulations. And he's a very conscientious
Yeah, no,
person. All right, so getting back to the conditions. Do you have any more conditions for Mr. Corliss at 254 Bank, like very specific conditions, other than I would say they have to be planted within the same growing season as the pool and the garage are done. He can't wait years to do this buffer strip. So planting specific conditions, I'll put in there. The irrigation, no irrigation, fertilization.
He said he would put in, it's a split rail fence.
The split rail with the mesh behind it, but elevated at the bottom at least 6
Should that be in
inches.
the conditions?
Yes, it will be. Yep, I have that. All those specifics will be put in. I'll email them to you anyways. If you have comments, just email them directly me before I issue.
You have to sign them anyways, right? So we're gonna see
You
again
did sign them.
the order of conditions.
You signed that's why I was hoping if other towns have or a lot of parties have brought this up, a lot of towns will actually do the draft orders of conditions the night they approve the project. It could be it's hard to do them right after you approve a project because you don't have time to think about it. But on the other hand, it delays people a couple more weeks.
We've never done it this way before.
I know.
So we've always reviewed
I don't-
them and voted on them.
Right, that's fine with me.
I
I won't issue anything if you don't.
Yeah, I don't, does anyone else feel the way I do that, I'd like to see them?
What I could do if we
You like
wanted
to
to
read
move
them.
things faster in the future, and this is if I have time, is if I sense a project is gonna get approved, I could draft them ahead of time with recommended conditions. Wouldn't be for everyone, but maybe for real simple projects,
Well, if you got a proponent that really has a need to
Right,
expedite things,
right.
that's fine.
But in the future, I could do that. That way you'd have something ahead of time. I just don't want you to ever think that I'm pushing you to approve a project.
No.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty big departure, and I think about some of
Okay.
these detailed orders.
Yes.
I think
Okay.
we should see them as a group
That's
and
fine.
discuss them.
That's fine. Well, they will be on for the next agenda then.
I know, you gave me an out to have less work for us, but.
No, it's fine. We'll see what next meeting brings. Ernie should be back. Might have 7. We might have 7 next time.
I can't think of any time we've had 7.
And then, so Walter's an alternate. The gentleman who was sitting in the back of the room most of the meeting, Mr. Ketchum, you guys have met him because he met with us. He's applied to be our second alternate. So we're not only going to have a full board, we're going to have 2 alternates.
The guy standing up, or?
No, you didn't see him at all.
Okay.
Way in the back
So the
there.
guy who was sitting here, that was Mr. King.
Yes, I saw him. He
left, though.
Yeah, he was watching everything we had to say.
I know he was. Anyway, so the only things we have to do is you have a couple sets of minutes. Oh, yeah, let's do minutes first, and then I would like to touch on erosion on the north-facing Long Pond shoreline. We've had a lot of people call asking to put sand down. In certain areas, they lost a lot of beach this winter. The water's just much higher, so.
Is the North Shore?
North-facing, sorry, north-facing. South Shore, but north-facing.
I
But
wish
maybe
I
we can
had seen
do-
which one Mr. King was.
Yeah.
He was staring at all of us.
I got.
Yeah, he did.
All right, so we have 2 sets of minutes. They were in, huh?
Which
It is.
packet?
Were they in April 18th?
I've got
Or were they in April 6th?
January 3rd and February 7th I have.
Okay, that's the ones we're talking about,
Okay.
minutes.
Both of those meetings before us, correct?
Yes, you don't have to vote.
Yep. And
You
I've,
actually can, because it's really just checking like grammar and stuff. If we needed you for a quorum, which we don't, you could vote legally, but we don't need you for a quorum.
You're doing January 3rd?
Yeah, let's do January 3rd first.
I only have 2.
that's
2
all I
sets,
have.
yeah.
Two
And there's
sets.
more
Oh,
listed,
okay.
we didn't get to them. We're trying to catch up.
That's okay.
Nikki's doing a good job. I'm not.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been through the 3rd, I don't have any comments. January 3rd. These are good minutes.
She does a good job.
Yeah. Can't believe she's in the Brewster Concom too. That's amazing.
I'll tell you more in a bit. She's pretty. Well, I shouldn't say she's pretty insane because, well, she has a baby on top of it. But I used to, when I was working for Eastham, I was on Brewster Concom. I was on the Brewster Water because I used to live in Brewster. I was on the Water Quality Task Force, and I was on something else. And I burnt out.
Yeah.
It was interesting. But yeah. She's motivated, that one. All right, any comments on the 3rd? Okay.
I move that we accept the minutes for January 3rd, 2018.
A second?
Seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
So Brad, what I'll do is before you leave, I'll just have you sign them. I'll put them over here. And then February 7th.
I'm just reading it. Now that I just read this, I have a question for you.
Sure.
The cemetery that they came and discussed with us, where is that?
Island Pond Cemetery?
Yeah.
So if you go down the bike trail that way, so west, it's on the right. So if you go back out to Main Street here, go through that wonky intersection.
Yeah.
At the, right by Doneville and Ames and by
Yeah.
the Monument, store there.
Yeah.
You take the right.
Oh,
and you
that
drive
little
in
side
there.
road?
Yeah.
Because I was trying to find it on the other side.
No, you can't, yeah, you have to
Oh,
go
okay.
in, I think it's just called Island Pod Road.
Okay.
And it's right by it's the right at the Monument store,
Okay.
before Doneville and Ames. And, you go across the bike trail, it's a beautiful cemetery.
I want to go down there.
It's pretty interesting, and what we're proposing is we're doing, an arboretum there, and then a pollinator garden as well, so.
Yeah, I want to go down there, but I kept trying to
It's
find
okay, we
it.
had a lot of tree damage, we were working, to clean that
Oh,
up.
did they?
So they're gonna plant more trees throughout the cemetery?
Yeah,
It's already pretty nice, but
yeah, they're gonna take a few down
some
just to
of
get
them
more light in.
are starting to come down.
Well, a lot of them came down in the storms.
Yeah, no.
They're gonna take some of the pitch pines, a few of them more down, and then we have about 18 different species in there now, not of trees, but trees and shrubs. Augment that, and, also put in some wildflower
You guys good with,
gardens.
February?
Yeah, so far I've read almost all of it.
Okay, give you a minute.
Yeah, the cemetery department's pretty proactive. It's actually been really fun to work on.
Yeah.
Boy.
Looks okay to me.
I didn't see you guys at the Yield Talk last night.
I was here.
Probably late.
Working.
Wow.
Well, no, actually, I went home a little early because I wasn't feeling that good.
On February 7th.
Yep.
Am I missing it, that we don't have the commissioners present?
Present up top, Brad Chase, Carolyn O'Leary, Rob Mador.
February 7th? Where?
Above call to order? Oh, do you have,
Oh, no. You're right. We don't even have
Oh.
call to order.
are you,
I have called to order.
February 7th?
I have call to order.
She
but
must have
nothing.
revised it. She put that in then. I have it on my copy.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
She probably realized she missed that, but yes, we had Brad, Carolyn, Rob,
Okay.
Paula,
Yeah, I don't
Stan,
have that.
and me. I apologize, but I'm sure she just added that. So I'll compare the two.
Good catch.
Yeah, I'll take that, but if you want to,
Well, I move we accept February
Accept
7th
them.
minutes with that change to add the
yeah,
attendees.
it's on my copy, so that's good. Thank you.
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
All right, so if you don't mind,
Motion that they put heat in this room.
Oh, my God, it's awful in here.
you think it's freezing? I must be sick.
Maybe it's this corner.
Maybe it's the corner.
I was outside all day today. This is
This
nice.
feels great, right?
Yeah, it's fine.
No.
I thought we were supposed to.
Outside most of the days.
It was cold,
Okay.
like certain places where the wind was strong.
Oh,
God,
yeah.
We have.
It's a good thing it's not warm in here, I'd be right out of the
Snoozing.
picture already.
Weren't we supposed to talk about South Street?
He,
That was,
No,
we
it's-
talked about that Friday.
we did. He can't make it. I had told him. I thought we were gonna have an extremely long night tonight, so I said, Ken, you might want to come on May 2nd because so it was my bad. I thought we'd be here at least till 10:30, 11 o'clock
Yeah.
tonight.
I really was motivated to move it along tonight.
Yes,
I appreciate
You
it.
might have
Me
noticed
too.
I didn't pick too many fights.
Well, when we have 7 commissioners sitting at the table, it would take longer just because there's 17.
Yeah.
So they're not on, and Mr. Saffron at 177 Forest, he'll be here next time too.
Oh, good.
Yay.
So, erosion on Long Pond, on our side. We have a couple, these are just 2 of the ones who have asked for some sand. And typically nourishment is done with an order of conditions, but so when the state issued an emergency certification this year for storm damage, it kind of allows people to do a lot of work without a permit that they normally could not do. I had one more today, actually, I don't have the plan for it.
Do you know when that expires? 'Cause
These are both new.
no, that
May
emergency order.
2nd, they
May
might
2nd.
extend it again.
Oh, boy. A lot is happening around the state with that. It's,
So what they essentially want, well, let's do this one first. This is much fastest. Right? No. So in this particular case, I'll show it around, but, so here's the house, there's the banking, there's a bordering vegetated wetland here, and they have a dock, and this little beach area right here, they have some fiber rolls too. All they want to do is, they've lost all the sand that was here from this past winter. I would be okay with doing it under an emergency or administrative permit if they were to just replace what was in that beach area. I just don't want to see the beach area expanded. What we're starting to get people saying is, oh, I don't have a bordering vegetated wetland anymore because of these storms. And I'm like, no, you do. It's just underwater. It'll be fine. In another year. It won't die. So no, you can't. Like, we had that today. You know, somebody who wanted to kind of make their beach bigger because they thought they didn't have a bordering vegetated wetland anymore. Yeah. So are you comfortable as long as it stays to the beach area? If they lost sand to their beach and now it's, like in this case, it's just cobble, and they just want a couple inches of sand only in the beach area. Would you
So
be
it's,
okay if they add that?
it's cobble because it was
Took all the
exposed.
sand.
Right.
Everything, huh?
How many
Just a
cubic yards?
one-time, we'd have to calculate it. I'd
Yeah.
have
Maybe
to
you want
ask
to be
for
more
a
concerned with
calculation. Heights.
a maximum coverage.
That's what
2
I'm saying,
inches,
like
4
3
inches,
inches.
something
Yeah.
of that nature, because the cubic yardage is gonna vary from site to site.
2 to 3 inches coverage, I
Yeah.
would say.
I normally want to see an NOI for any nourishment.
Right.
And so this, I just have to think about, I trust your judgment, Amy.
It's hard because it's this technical emergency situation, I guess, but it's not really
I don't-
compromising a house.
See, I don't buy that.
It's not compromising a
No,
house.
I don't buy that. You
You
should,
could do it as a one-time, this is the one, this one's particularly interesting. You see this one recently, this is both of these are Mark Burgess projects, coincidentally. They had a staircase down,
Oh,
and they
yeah.
had, a bulkhead, like a small bulkhead.
Mhm.
They already had something there, they had stone wall. They had beach on top of it, they had sand on top of that wall, and they lost all the sand. So in that case, I don't see a huge deal because it's a wall, and it used to, so in this case, I'm likely to say, okay, yeah, you could put some sand back there. This one's a little different because of bordering vegetated wetland, but in this case, he has a bank, he had this beach area, then a wall, then
so he's going to put everything above the wall.
yeah.
See, my concern also is, the river herring spawn in those shallow shoals on the long fetches.
I told him all it has to be above the water. You
Yeah.
cannot, I had
Oh,
somebody
okay,
today
100%,
saying,
yeah.
I had somebody today say, well, can I just fill in? I said, well, no, that's definite notice of intent. You're probably not gonna be able to fill
Right,
in the pond.
right.
But they asked first, so that was good.
How many do you have, Amy?
About 5 of them.
Oh, God.
Most of them are kind of small business, where they just want to cover, they lost the sand, they don't want to walk on the cobble.
Yep. Is it all Long Pond, on that Long
Yep.
Pond Drive along there? Or is there anything?
Sequatum and, Long Pond Drive.
Yep.
Is the access to the beaches readily available?
Yeah, basically they're gonna have to do it with buckets going downstairs, so it's not a large volume of sand. Well, these two have stairs. The one I visited today is just a long, it's not steep. It's farther on the east side of Long Pond where I visited today.
Any request along 124, those beaches? Those
Good.
beaches, they have a lot of structures that I just don't think are,
What I found was predominantly
Yeah, I'd
this.
like to clean the whole thing out.
I think there's a lot there that's not
I
authorized.
did an inventory.
Disgusting.
I did an inventory with Rob in the fall. We're starting to, it's on my to-do list. I have photo documentation of that whole shoreline. And I'm hoping to pick away at that gradually. All the sheds, the little patios out there. Yeah, so I do have all the,
Yep, what's everyone's preference?
how do you feel about the little bit of sand?
Yeah,
I would be in favor of it. I think it's a prudent thing to do.
right, but.
I would
to
keep
do
it
without
minimal.
a notice of intent.
I think under Amy's judgment, given the size of it, I believe that it would be,
There's one today that I'm knocking up to a notice of intent. It's too big.
I believe I would have faith in her judgment to decide what was very simple, very minor.
Right.
Be a one-time.
opposed
Yep.
Until next year and we have another storm.
You know, when we
gonna
approve nourishment for the saltwater beaches, we are pretty much just recycling the same sand.
Right.
The storm pulls it out,
Yeah.
we suck it up, put it back, the storm pulls it out, we suck it up, pull it back.
Right.
Right.
For these ponds and lakes, we're actually adding.
Adding.
Right, because it's coming from the
Filling.
bank. You're actually filling.
Yeah.
That's
we
why
are-
it has
we
to
are
be
filling in one pond,
minuscule amounts.
Slowly, yeah.
minuscule amount.
Yeah, the key, I guess, is it's gotta be upland, it can't be in the pond. And,
That's right. That way, as you gradually
Yeah.
introduce it, as you kind of walk into the pond, you gradually track the sand in if you put it landward.
one thing's
And
gonna
the
happen,
storms I was talking about.
when the
Storm
word gets
storm
out
took it
that
out.
you're doing this, everyone's gonna want one that way. And that's one thing I worry about too, is what is the threshold at which you...
That's why, instead of doing it, I brought it to you tonight because
Yeah.
I could see a domino effect here.
Right.
None of this is really for erosion control per se. It's basically to have a little sandy area to
It's
to
basically,
sit in.
yeah, some people are taking advantage of the storm declaration, I think.
Doesn't sound like any of this is related to protecting a structure.
It's not, no.
basically protect your feet.
Yeah.
I think, personally, I think if it was limited to 2 inches in thickness,
For a very small area.
for a very small area, I think that would be advisable to do that. I think
Clean
it's,
screen bank sand.
Yeah, I'd say
If it was
get through
bigger.
you seem to wanna go this route, so I'd say get through this rush of requests.
Yeah, I just,
And just keep in mind that I think we're all leery about the overnourishment and the impacts of nourishment that can occur when people
yeah,
really work on their own aesthetics
exactly.
in a resource area. So that's my concern, is the people that will overdo it.
Like I said, there's one today that I told him, if you want to do it, it's going to be a notice of intent. So I said, see how much, is it really worth it to you?
Right.
How much
So-
does a notice of intent cost?
It depends on what type of project. There's 6 categories, and the state likes to make it fun by dividing things up and adding weird numbers. But sand nourishment is done by the cubic yard.
Right.
Most of the time, upland stuff like houses, it's done by the number of activities. So, like for Mr. Corliss, he had, the state kind of leaves it up to us to decide what the charge should be. We charge it for 2 activities, basically. It's 110 per. And then it's 135 flat rate for everybody for filing under the bylaw. That's the money that goes to our wetlands fund.
Well, like the woman's comment.
Right. It's a couple $100. Compared to the price of a project. Well, then the abutters list could be monstrous.
Not happy with him at all. And I have to understand what I am agreeing to. Well, you know what? If the commissioners say that this needs to be done,
Right.
you need to agree to it.
Right. So, filing, we're actually on the low end. Let's try to encourage people to file and not be a huge burden. But,
Yeah, I think,
docks are a different price, or by
You see what
foot.
you did?
Revetments are by foot.
See
right.
that?
So if you're at 100 cubic yards, it kicks in a water quality certificate from DEP.
That's when I,
It wouldn't be that.
That's a big amount, but for me, even...
Oh, we're talking probably like 3
was
yards for one of these.
Yeah, so the threshold is probably somewhere 5 to 10. If it's 10 and above, I certainly would
Okay.
want it. But I don't think I'm ready to set a threshold, but I'm just kind of thinking of numbers.
It's good to hear though.
Yeah, if it's 1 or 2, and you think it's a good idea, then
Right,
fine.
and delivered by hand.
It has to be delivered by hand, no machines.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, but so if you make something that small too difficult, it's only going to encourage people to try to sneak it in a little bit at a time.
That's what I'm worried about too.
So,
So the real
More
small
forthright.
stuff,
Put
just
them
work
side
with
by
them.
side, you'd know
Yeah,
that, wouldn't you?
I think 1 or 2 cubic yards is a small amount, and that type
I
of
mean,
approval's fine.
I
At some
was sitting
point,
here trying to
you know, just
decide
let us
what
know,
he
and
prob- what
you're
he
gonna
had
know
done
when
for a
you
living.
think it's a potential impact to an adjacent resource area.
Is he
That's
a
what I'm concerned
professor?
about.
Don't worry.
Should we adjourn? You need to get some rest. Anything else we need to talk about? I'm ready to go home.
Not a need, not a need. First bite. All right, so
I'm ready.
Oh, second.
Go have some dinner. Well, are we done? Is it-
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Who moved?
I did.
Mark. Brad seconded. All are in favor, right?
Aye.
Let me shut this off.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The meeting is over, so.
Hold on.